Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Can we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Falls, will you call the roll, please?
Dr. Moriarty,
Here.
Mrs. Roberts,
Yep.
Mrs. Powers,
Here.
Mrs. Russell,
Here.
Mrs. Pritchett.
Here. Hey, to respect everybody's time, we are going to do things a little bit differently today. Public comment comes first. What we're going to ask is if you are not speaking about retiree health insurance, I'm looking at your cards and I'm calling you based upon what you put on your card. So you get to speak first. Then we are pulling the discussion of 5.01 to the top of the line. We are going to get the presentation from Mr. Calderon. Then the board is going to discuss, and then public comment for anyone who wants to speak about retiree health care. So if I call your name right now, you're welcome to come up for public comment, but it isn't about retiree health. It is about something else. I have Marisol Zaquera, followed by Brendan Krieger.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name is Marisol Zaquera, and I'm a local business owner and parent. My kids attended Felix Williams Elementary School, Stewart Middle, and ultimately Jensen Beach High School, and they're both college graduates and hopefully productive members of society thanks to our community. The reason why I'm here today is because I am concerned for those information that's coming to me as a business person and a community leader regarding ICE enforcement, the possibility of ICE enforcement in school property, in school campuses. We haven't heard, and nothing, we've been calling the school board, and we've been asking several people who are involved in different aspects of education as far as whether there's a specific policy that this school board has adopted when it comes to the possibility of ICE enforcements in schools against the children of immigrant families, mixed status families. We know for a fact that this enforcement, this kind of intrusive appearance in school campuses has happened in Tampa, it happens in Pinellas, it happened in Duval County, and it's most likely going to happen here in Martin County. So my question to you today is, what is the school board going to do to protect kids, to protect their safety, to protect their ability to attend school? Because as you know, there's been an increase in absence in many of these schools, Warfield Elementary, Jensen Beach Elementary, and J.D. Parker and Indiantown as well. And the reason is fear. Fear has no place in education. Politics should not be the reason why our children are not allowed to go to school. And this board and this educational system is bound to protect and safeguard our children. So I would like to invite the board to put out publicly procedures, protocols that are going to be enforced, that parents can rely on when they send their children to school, so they know they won't be taken out of their classroom and interrogated, which has happened already in Florida. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Brendan Krieger.
Hello, my name is Brendan Krieger. I'm here to speak about the same topic. I have two children, a child at Stewart Middle School and a child at Felix A. Williams I don't recall there ever being a time where there was even vague consideration in the past where we would send agents in a school to apprehend someone who's suspected of a crime. It has never been discussed in my entire lifetime anywhere that I've lived. So this is a first. Why is it a first? Because it's an absurd proposition, quite frankly, to send agents into a school for this, to put our staff in a position, administrators, teachers, and especially children where they're fearing that this may happen. We all work to ensure that our schools are a safe place that emphasize community, empathy, love for our neighbors, certainly not one where we're forcing our sweet, innocent children to witness agents swarming in and hauling away their best friend or their best friend's parents. So my 8th grade daughter sent me a message yesterday saying that there's been tons of communication between the kids at Stewart Middle School that ICE is going to raid any day. They're getting concerned. They have no guidance. And from everything we've read and heard in the news, there's school districts across the country that are taking a clear position on this and issuing clear guidance. Martin County Schools is a leader in education, and we usually take charge in these types of matters and not really wait for others. So I'm just asking that you kind of take this into consideration, that we have a clear stance and one that emphasizes the safety of our children, where frankly we just wouldn't allow this to happen because we never have before. It's never even been a consideration. So we shouldn't let these rumors and stress continue to grow with our kids, and we need to just kind of put that fire out right now and leave zero doubt in their minds. So this is also beyond education, beyond some of the potential legalities of this. It's a life lesson that we need to teach to our kids right now, and I think that this is extraordinarily important time period in their lives, and this is a time for us to step up and teach them a true life lesson of what we allow and what we don't. I've heard local, it's been crammed down my throat that we need local ability to operate how we want in school districts. Yet now I'm hearing that in this case we want to wait for federal guidance and then state guidance. I'm not quite sure where we really stand as a board, if we want to leave that up to us locally to make this decision or not. So thanks for hearing me out.
Thank you so much. Sir, can you come back for a moment? Sure. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I just wanted a clarification. You said that your 8th grade daughter contacted you?
Yes, she contacted me and said that there are group texts going around among students at Stewart Middle School that ICE is planning on raiding any day, and there's concern and fear over that and tons of uncertainty.
And she sent you that message during school?
She sent this to me, she sent this to me yesterday, and if that's the point that you took from this message,
I'm just
the
asking-
message is lost on you.
I'm just asking for
No,
clarification
she did
of
not
that.
send that
Okay.
to me during
Thank you
school.
very much.
Sure.
Sarah Contreras?
Good afternoon. My name is Sarai Contreras, and I have a child enrolled at Stewart Middle School and another at Felix. I, too, am concerned about the possibility of ICE conducting raids in our schools. Districts in our state and around the country have offered parents and staff detailed plans on how to respond to ICE raids. Our district has yet to do so. And I am here today to ask that the district release a plan and offer uniform guidance to staff. How are you as a board going to keep our children safe? Safe from the possibility of being profiled or questioned without a parent present? Will ICE be allowed to put children in handcuffs? We deserve transparency, and our children deserve to learn in a safe environment without the fear of federal agents dragging their classmates away. As a clinical social worker who has worked primarily with women and children who have experienced significant trauma, it alarms me to consider the mental health impact ICE raids could have on our children. I have sat in therapy sessions with children who have witnessed ICE raids firsthand. The effects of witnessing a traumatic event are long-lasting and severe. As a parent and a trauma therapist, I urge the district to show leadership and compassion towards all of our students and families, regardless of their immigration status. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are now going to move on to our Is there anyone else who wants to speak about a topic other than retiree health? Okay. Mr. Calderon, please.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board, Superintendent Maine. I am Don Calderon. I'm the Director of Risk Management and Employee Benefits with the Martin County School District. I am here today to provide some information to the school board as a follow-up to both the September 2024 school board workshop and the January 14th, 2025 school board workshop regarding retiree health insurance board policies 6560. And just before I get started, I just want to set the record straight for our retirees that are in the audience that the school board is not looking and actually is not allowed to take away any insurance from retirees. Florida statute 112.0801 requires that school districts offer the same medical insurance to retirees that they offer to active employees. So this board policy 6560, the way that the board has had discussions about it, is from a budget and funding perspective. Nobody is discussing anything about taking medical insurance away from our retirees. Okay? Okay, so I thought that we would kind of do this a little bit differently here since there was so much conversation a couple of weeks ago at the January board workshop. Following the January board workshop, staff, along with the Garing Group, took the conversations that were had by the board and provided a framework of options for 3 sets of employees. We presented these options to the superintendent last week, and the superintendent has made his recommendations. I'm going to summarize them first and go over kind of the buckets of employees and retirees that we've been looking at since September of 2024. So the first bucket of people that we're looking at are retirees under 65 and not Medicare eligible. You're going to see a couple of different options in the presentation, but the superintendent, along with staff and the Garing Group, is recommending option A, which means that all retiree health insurance contributions shall continue as is through June 30th, 2030, and then effective July 1st, 2030, that the board contributions for retirees under 65 will end. And then we have a next group of employees that are in the DROP program, and that for those employees in the DROP program, and also for any employees that may be in a pension plan that retire between now and June 30th, 2030, that they be afforded the same board policy contributions as currently is through June 30th, 2030. Okay. And then the next set of employees, the next set of people that we have been talking about and discussing are retirees that are over 65. So the superintendent, along with staff, is recommending that effective July 1st, 2025, that the Martin County health insurance subsidy should go from $5 per year service per month, 30-year max, to $2.50 per month per year service per month, and that this shall continue through June 30th, 2030, and then effective July 1st, 2030, that these contributions for retirees over 65 will end. Just for context purposes, Board Policy 6560 was created by the board in November of 2015, and at that time, there was no end date on there. So, we use round numbers. We got 10 years of the current iteration of Board Policy 6560. Our recommendation is you extend it out another 5 years, as is for those that are under 65, and keep contributing for the over 65 with a decrease in the amount. That would bring that up to 15 years in total. Okay.
Mr. Calderon, why did you pick 250?
$2.50 was the number that we picked because when the board policy 6560 was created back in November of 2015, the board at that time selected $5 per month per year service with a 30-year max to match what FRS was offering. So you got $5 a month per year service through FRS. You got another $5 from the Martin County School District. You got $10 altogether. On July 1st, 2023, the state moved their subsidy from $5 to $7.50. So that $2.50 that we're recommending will bring retirees back to the $10 that they were getting in total for the first 8 years of the way 6560 was written. Any other questions this time? Do my best here to try and get everything on the screen so everybody can see it here. So ultimately, for the current retirees under 65 and not Medicare eligible, we are recommending option A. As I stated, that the policy will continue through June 30th, 2030. And for this board policy, retirees receive a contribution, a percentage of contribution based on years of service, based on the board contribution towards active medical insurance contributions. So the board contributes $6,500 towards active employees, and based on their years of service, they can earn anywhere from a 25% contribution to 100% of that $6,500 based on their years of service. So we are recommending that option A be selected. And just a note here, there was a presentation that was given at the January 27th Insurance Committee meeting last Monday. And some of the information that I've presented here or will present or discuss here as a result of conversations that we had at that Insurance Committee. So one of the questions that was brought up last week was if we ended it, on June 30th, 2030, how many retirees would that affect? So we know from previous workshop that there are 117 retirees that are on the district's group health insurance. So they're either on the HMO, the PPO, or the high deductible plan. By selecting option A, this will only impact 26 retirees moving forward out of the 117. So at that point, the majority of those retirees will turn 65 and move into that other bucket of over 65. And the backup material that correlates to that is found in Appendix I, page 5. So the next slide here is just simply a bar graph that shows what the cost would be to the district and what the savings would be. So if the board were to select option A as their decision to continue as is through June 30th, 2030 for under 65 retirees, it would cost the board between now and June 30th, 2030, roughly $1.8 million. It would only save $339,000. And we did that for each of the options B through D. Okay, so the next group of people are those that are in the pension plan. So just as a friendly reminder, when you are a public sector employee here, you have a choice between either being in the pension plan or in the investment plan. It's much more difficult to determine when somebody may retire if they're in the investment plan, because once they satisfy the FRS requirements, essentially they could retire at any time. However, if you're in the pension plan under drop, you notify Florida Retirement System of when your drop end date is, which is ultimately the last day that you can retire. You can retire earlier, however, you have to retire by that certain date. So it's a little bit easier to kind of plan the liability for that. So having said that, we are recommending option A for not only those that are in the pension plan, but also those that may retire in the investment plan as well between now and June 30th, 2030. We talked about this at the insurance committee, and one of the questions was, it was a great question by one of the audience members, was, well, you presented a liability of about $2.2 million, and that was basically assuming that everybody would retire as soon as they enter drop. But that's not really realistic, correct? We know, generally speaking, that most active employees, when they enter drop, they typically work until their drop end date. So we kind of took a look at the numbers a little differently, which I'm going to get into on the next page here. But just for consistency purposes, we're utilizing the numbers here based on what we presented a couple of weeks ago. And then I'll show you how that figure changes as we take a look at when they may realistically retire. So ultimately, we took a look at this, and we said that if all the employees stayed until their drop date, and the board ended the contributions on June 30th, 2030, that out of the 88 drop employees that are currently under 65, there would only be 13 employees/retirees that may be affected by the board selecting option A, which would cost the board about $1.6 million for a total savings of $548,000.
Could I have a question for you there?
Yeah, I'm going to grab my bottle of water while you ask that. Yeah.
So you're saying there's 13, I'm counting 27 out of the 66, so perhaps you can walk me through.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Appendix 6, which is labeled drop under 65. And I guess that's, hang on a minute. Which appendix do you want me to look at? Let me start with that.
Okay.
Do you want me to look at Appendix 5, drop under 65, option B? Or where do you want me to look?
Okay, so are you referring to, Mrs. Roberts, are you referring to the current retirees under 65 and not Medicare eligible on this one right here, page 3?
I'm referring to the people that you just talked about in drop.
Okay.
So not, which I believe that there's 66 people that are currently in drop that are under the age of 65, correct?
6 total currently under.
66 under the age of 65 right now that are in drop, correct? And
33 of those will still be. 33 of those will still be under the age of 65 at the time that their drop period, the entirety of their drop period ends.
okay, so I was trying to understand what Mr. Calderon said. It sounded to me like he said that out of that 66, that using this option B would only, and cutting off after 2030, would affect 13 people. Is that what he said?
Yes. I'm going to,
B or A?
Go to that.
I think it was option A, wasn't it? Option A?
So I guess my first question is, which attachment is that spreadsheet? Let me start with that.
So I've pulled up page 8 here, in the presentation entitled Revised Final. And these are the drop employees that are under 65, and that will remain under 65 when their drop end date ends. So if you look in the column that is labeled 2030 to 2031, these people here in this column, when they retire, they will still be under 65 years old. Okay, so if you count them
Okay.
up, there's 30.
So let me stop you with that. So I think I am looking at the page that says, added as a follow-up to January 27, 2025 Insurance Committee meeting.
Yes,
And it's a page that says expected liability.
correct, yes.
And it's a page that starts with employee number 1, that the lines going across say 63 to 1.686, 2.0, 0.314, et cetera, correct?
Yes,
Okay, so if I draw a hard line after that 2930 number.
yes.
And first of all, I want to correct one statement that I think that you might not have said what you meant to say.
Okay.
You were saying something about employees, this is assuming employees retire right after they enter drop, which is not what you meant to say. I think you meant to say, this is assuming employees retire right now and quit being an employee, and then they would be in a category of under 65, not Medicare eligible, and no longer in drop, correct?
Yes, I apologize if I misspoke. What I meant to say was the chart that we're looking at right now, entitled Expected Liability. We're taking a look at those people in drop, and we are assuming, looking at it from a different perspective, if they continue to work until their drop end date ends.
Okay.
Which is typically what most people do when they enter drop. They work until their last date.
Okay.
So I apologize.
And I thought I understood you to say that of these 66, that implementing the ending date of the 2930 year would impact 13. And I beg to differ on that, because if I draw a hard line between 2930 and 3031, on page 1, I have 3 people, number 34, 35, and 36. Is that, oh, wait.
Yeah.
Right? So I see 34, 35, and 36, which have an expected liability in the 30-31 year, correct? That would be 3. And then when I go to the next page and go down, I'm seeing number 48 with 2 years of expected liability. I'm seeing 50 and 51 and 52 and 53 and 54 and 55 and 56 and 57, 58, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66. Do you see those same people? Correct? So when I add those, that's 20. Is that correct? You understand what I just did? I took anybody who had a number in the liability column that starts with the 2030-31 year, correct? Okay, and those 30 people, so now let's back up again, using this assumption, right? The total cost, if you ran this all the way out for this 66 people, it would, the last of these 66 people who would be affected would get their last payment in the 38-39 year, correct? One person, correct? And so if I draw that hard line before I take everything, you're telling me that for this group of 66 people, my cost from this year through 38-39 is $648,000. Is that correct? Correct. And then if I take
For all 15 years.
For
all
all
15
all
years.
15 years.
All 15
yes.
years is 648. And I know that I've got 20 that are affected beyond the 29-30 year, correct? And then if I want to figure the liability for that, I'm adding the 48,000, the 73, the 82.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Thank you.
Thank you. That was Gabrielle Swain. She's our
Thank you,
benefits
Gabrielle.
consultant with the Garen Group, who is the math wizard behind this, so thank you. Okay. So the final group of people that we have been talking about are the current retirees over 65 or Medicare eligible. And it is recommendation that we're recommending to the board, option B, which will pay those retirees for another 5 years through the 29-30 year ending on June 30th, 2030, who are currently 65 and retired, or who may turn 65 between now and June 30th, 2030, and still provide them a Martin County health insurance subsidy, but to decrease that amount from $5 per month per year service to $2.50. And we provided a cost of that and a total savings for that. As you may recall, the school board is paying roughly $1.1 million for the Martin County health insurance subsidy for those retirees that are over 65 years old. And if you take a look at page 11 here, one of the questions that came out of the insurance committee meeting last week was to try and go back as far as we could and determine what the district has contributed to those retirees over 65. And we were able to go back to the beginning of the 21-22 year, and we broke it out between those that are on a district-sponsored plan, whether they're on a group health plan or a Medicare Advantage or supplement plan, and those that are not on any plan at all, and they're just receiving that subsidy from the district. So you can see roughly.
I'm sorry, I want to correct that statement also. When you see not on any plan at all, not on any district plan.
Correct, yes.
Thank you.
Yep. So subsidy for retirees on a district-sponsored plan is one column, and then the next column is subsidy for retirees who are not on a district-sponsored plan. And we have the total subsidy cost. So you could see that the amount is rising, roughly 5% on average, and based on annualization for the 24-25 year, we're expecting $1.1 million. And so that is the data that I wanted to bring forward to the board, and wanted to let the insurance committee audience know last week that we did provide the information and questions that we were asked to the board, and I am available for any questions.
I guess mine is more of not necessarily questions, but kind of how I feel about this whole thing. You know, we often say how much we value our employees. How can we truly say that and then our actions show differently? I've spoken with several retirees and current staff members, many of whom were offered positions in other districts, some multiple times, and they decided to stay with Martin County because of the retirement insurance benefit. If we take the retiree insurance benefit away, it will reduce the incentive for employees to remain here. This puts the district in a difficult position. If teachers are no longer incentivized to stay with us, they may leave for a higher paying district in their final years before retirement to increase their FRS. The result would be losing some of our most veteran and seasoned teachers. These teachers are greatly needed and essential in mentoring and supporting our newer teachers. Losing these veteran educators would be detrimental to the district. This serves as a key retention tool as well, as a way we can show how much we value our employees and their service. Additionally, there are also those individuals who entered the DROP program with the understanding that this benefit would be available to them. For them, this was a critical part of their retirement planning. Taking it away now would be unfair because they would have likely made a different decision had they known the benefit would be removed. We should not place these employees in financial hardship because we are looking to reduce our budget. I am asking for the board to consider that we maintain policy 6560 as is and explore other ways to trim our budget without jeopardizing the promises we made to employees.
Please let her speak. Thank you.
I'm just asking the board to possibly reconsider. I know that this isn't ideal for anyone, but that's my ask.
So first of all, I don't think that we have anything to consider yet. I think that, I think there's two things we have to look at because we have a lot of data. And I think that we have talked a lot about, first of all, I think we have two groups of people that are retired now that I think we as a board should decide right now they're grandfathered in. They're grandfathered. We have the 117 that are under 65, and we have the others that are on the HIS. Whether we decide to go with keep the $5 or the $250, that's another. But I think we can decide that tonight to give them assurance that that is not going to go away. They're still going to get that benefit, and then if we do anything differently, because we've talked a lot about our current employees that are in drop, but we have not made any consideration for the employees that are in the investment plan. And we don't even know what that number looks like. We have no idea how many of those employees plan to retire. We need to plan for them too. We are excluding an entire group of people that are not even, it's not even considered in this data. And those are our current employees, not our retirees. So I think we need some additional information, but I think that we probably could have consensus moving forward. I did talk to Terry Harmon before I came in tonight, and we talked a little bit about the policy, how it's kind of split up. He believes that we need to look at the policy and have more clarity about when someone joined the district. I know we have 2015, the last time this policy was changed, that we look at how we're going to do this moving forward in the policy before we change it. But I honestly don't believe we have enough data because we have to, there is a group of people that we are not even considering here tonight. But I do think we can have consensus on at least the current retired employees or former employees.
Sure. So first of all, I want to say that when I'm looking at the superintendent's recommendations, and I also am going to divide it into two buckets, but then there's sub-buckets, right? So one bucket is the people who are already retired. Whether that means that you're already retired, you're under 65, whether that means you're already retired over 65, you're already retired, or you're in drop. So that piece is a person that you know what a retirement date is, you know what that looks like. With the superintendent's recommendations, with the first one being a cost of $1.8 million, the second one being a cost of 1.6, which is a total of 3.4. Not talking about the health insurance subsidy right now, just talking about the existing people who are retirees, the ones who are golfing and playing mahjong and doing all those other wonderful things. Okay, so that group of people, right? When you're saying that your recommendation is to chop it after 5 years and you're giving me a cost of 3.4, the way I look at it is to make that cost, instead of 3.4, make that cost 2.8. The way that you would make that cost 2.8 is you would take the entirety of people who are either in drop right now, under the age of 65 in drop, or the retirees that are retired and under age 65, and pay them all the way out. The cost of that is 2.155 for the first group, the non-drop group. The drop group, considering that the drop group people will most likely work And so your cost is not the 1.6, your cost is the 648,000, correct, Don? Correct, Don?
I'm getting the math expert here.
Okay.
Hold on one second.
The best case scenario.
Yes. So that is if everybody works their entire period until their drop period is over. So when I add the 2.155 to the 648, I come up with 2.8 million, as opposed to the 3.4 with the cutoff. So with the cutoff, I'm coming up with 3.4 because I'm assuming that everybody who's on drop is going to come in tomorrow and say, I'm out of here. I'm no longer working, continue under this policy. But in reality, the history has been they continue to work through their drop period, which then means I'm closer to the 648. So when I do that, I'm at 2.8 million. I think that what that does is it gives closure and gives some sense of security to the people who are retired and to the people who have made their plans, and doesn't put them in a position where I get the 6,500 for 5 more years, but I've got a 2-year gap. And now I've got to go figure out what I'm going to do for insurance for the 2-year gap, or a 3-year gap, or a 1-year gap, or whatever it is. Because in reality, if they had known that ahead of time, they might not have either retired, they might not have entered drop when they did, et cetera. So I kind of feel like that kind of like gives some ability to make your planning done and ability to do what you need to do, knowing that you're protected, your 6,500 is protected under that number. Then I think that for the people who are currently employees, right? The current employees that have not entered drop. So the current employees that are either on the retirement plan, which means they could enter drop at any point in time, or the investment plan where we don't know if they're going to enter drop at any time. We don't know what they're going to do. But they're not retired and they're not in drop. I believe that we need additional information for those employees. I believe that the information to accurately look at what that employee pool looks like, our current employees, we need to know their age, their years of service with the district, and whether they're in the investment plan or the retirement plan. I think then you can look at it and see where people are and see where our pots of people are. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I think, I agree with Mrs. Powers, that we can kind of I'm willing to close the door on the people, or leave the door open, whichever we want to look at it, but to give some finality to the people who are the retirees. People who are in drop and people who are retirees, that I'm willing to say, you run out this group of people, the 117 and the 66. You're running yourself out through that period of time. Anybody who's a current employee, we need to come back and look at. Then there's the health insurance subsidy piece. And I think that's a different discussion as to what we do with the health insurance subsidy piece. But for that first piece, that's what I think. And my 2.8 comes out less than your 3.4. Just math.
Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
You mentioned employees in drop, but you're only talking about the employees the 66 and the 117.
Correct.
Because the ones that are in drop we will consider that with all of the employees that as we get more data. So all of our active employees, because if they're in drop, they're still active employees.
So I'm
because what I will say just really quickly is that just because they're in drop or they're in the investment plan doesn't mean that those people are also not planning for their retirement. We just don't know about it. So we need to consider them the same way that we consider all of our other active employees, or the retirement for our active employees, because they're planning for their retirement as well.
I agree with your thinking, but I believe that the ones who are currently in drop now have announced and know the date that they are leaving. So imagine if you're in the retirement plan and you enter drop and you're planning on leaving in 2 years. Your 8 years is up in 2 years. I am in the investment plan, and I'm planning on leaving. We're twins. I'm planning on leaving the same time you're leaving. It's just because I'm in the investment plan, I don't need to tell anybody. But I think when we look at those numbers and we look at what those are, we can look at those separately and see what we do with those. And I'm not saying that everybody who is not retired is in the same boat, because I think that's why you need a segregation of who's in the investment plan and who's in the retirement plan. But I just think that if you know that you're in drop, you don't have, let's say we're twins, you know you're in drop, you don't have the ability to walk back from not retiring, correct?
Right?
Because you told me 6 years ago you're going to retire in 2 more years. So you don't have the ability to do that. So as far as I'm concerned, you are retired. You're working 2 more years, but I know your retirement date. Me, your twin sister in the investment plan, you don't know my retirement date. It might be tomorrow, it might be in 2 years like yours, it might be in 4 years. And I do think we need to have the grace and the consideration for those people to know, how many years of service have you been here? Have you been here for 20 years? Have you been here for 25? Have you been here for 30? And look at them the same way you would look at somebody in drop, because they have a different choice on how they're doing things. But I think when we look back at the people who are current employees, we divide those employees into groups. We divide those employees into the groups that are drop eligible and the ones that are not drop eligible.
Right, but in the end, we should be treating both groups, depending on where they fall in their retirement planning, the same. So I'm not talking about retirees, I'm talking about our active employees. So if they came and that was their only option, was to have the investment plan, they don't have the option to enter drop. And drop, if you're in drop, you're technically considered retired anyway. You're just allowed to continue to work for the set amount of time. But I just want to make sure that the people, our employees that did not have an option or have chosen investment, if they're a current employee, that they are treated the same. And we look at that data consistently for all of our active employees.
So are you saying you want to hold off on a decision for the 66 until we look at the entire data? Or are you willing to look at the 66 and say, okay, the 66 is going to cost me $648,000. Let me just run the $648,000 out, and I'll come back with the ones, and let me look at the people on the investment plan. Let me look at the people that aren't on the investment.
Well, don't you think that we should look at it in its entirety from an expense standpoint? If we're going to look at our group of active employees, that we should look at that as a whole, not decide and say, oh, well, we're going to give them this, and then we find out, oh my goodness, we have a lot more than we thought, or maybe we have a lot less than we thought. But I think it's important that we look at it in its entirety, and we bring that back to our next meeting. I mean, we're looking at July 1 for an effective date, correct? So we have time. I just don't want to rush that piece of it, because I want to consider all of our active employees.
Right. I think what I was trying to say is the same way that you said that if you're in drop, you are technically a retiree. I wanted to, I mean, I've talked to a lot of retirees. I wanted to give some assurance to people who are retirees. And the only people that I'm classifying right now as a retiree is somebody who is currently retired or somebody who's in drop. Because if I'm in the investment plan and I'm planning on putting in my letter tomorrow, I am not technically a retiree, correct?
Right, because our policies dictate different things for different groups. So if you're on the investment plan, you're not required to notify FRS. You're not required. So if we want to tell people, if you want this benefit that all the other active employees are getting, you need to give us 8 years notice that you're going to retire, and we hold you to it. Like, is that what you're suggesting? Or are we going to look at probability of retirement, so at a certain age, and move forward that way? At least we would have good numbers to know. We have data on what historically retirements have looked like. I think that that's just good business for us to look at it in its entirety. If we're going to make a decision, we need to have all the information and what the financial impact on the district is going to be, and how long that will be.
What are we doing?
Mr. Calderon wants to speak, I think.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and I am by no means pressuring your timeline. I think you should, this is a sensitive subject, and I'm recommending you take the time that you need. I just want to let you know that for any Martin County health insurance subsidy or any contribution, anything that affects the cost of insurance for retirees, we have a June 6th deadline to upload that file into FRS for a July 1st effective date. So I'm just
Well, I think we've.
putting that out there.
I mean, I don't know, I guess I would ask the rest of the board if we're ready to add, or just get consensus on what we're going to do with the actual retirees. Because if you have a June, there could be retirees that retire between now and June 30th that are still going to get the same HIS and the same, that our current retirees are getting. So, I mean,
So just to give you where I was thinking that if you were taking the 117 and if you were taking the 66 and getting that closure and getting that piece out of the way, so a retiree by virtue of the fact that you're in drop and are continuing to work, or if you're a retiree and you're not in drop, but you are technically a retiree, meaning that you're receiving the state HIS subsidy, et cetera, that group, the 117 and the 66, right?
so do the ones in drop get the HIS?
Once they
They're
finish
getting the
their-
6,500 now as an active employee.
Mrs.
So-
Powers, it just depends on their date. It depends on their age when they retire. So if they're under 65 and they meet those years of service, they'll get the contribution based on the board's contribution towards active medical insurance. If they retire after 65 and their drop date ends after 65, then they'll get that health insurance subsidy based on years of service.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about our current employees that are in drop, that this deadline that you're talking about, that we have to meet, there is no,
not getting
they're
HIS
not,
now.
they are not considered in this deadline. This is, your deadline only relates to our active current retirees that no longer work for the district.
Correct, or anybody that retires by a certain date. If you change the amount that you're contributing, we have to send that to FRS by June 6th.
So your statement is no.
But that only impacts the current retirees. And if we change the $5 or, you know, whatever the board decides, we need to vote on.
Well, it not only impacts the current retirees, right? So it impacts the FRS deadline in order to make that change, right? Which I thought it was more like months, that you needed a month's leeway to get FRS to get it correct. It's nice to know that it only takes a month and a half. But if I retire tomorrow, right, that I also need to know where I am on this list so that this processing piece can happen. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, the processing piece might not independently be for each retiree. It's a process piece that says, okay, Mrs. Pritchard, you're a retiree that looks like this. This is what your piece looks like. Mrs. Russell, you're a retiree that looks like this. This is what you look like. Mrs. Powers, you're not a retiree yet, but in 2 months when you are a retiree, this is what your piece looks like, and we know where we are moving forward. Is that?
Yes.
Sorry.
I'd just like to hear from the people here. So everybody that came out, and I appreciate everybody being here. And I look forward to hearing from you all. And in particular, there's a lot of confusion up here, and we need a lot of more information. But from what I'd like to hear from you all is maybe what you were promised. And I would love to hear that we can work this out and that we can get some kind of agreement so that the people in this audience don't feel like the wool is being pulled out from under them, because that's the feeling I get from the emails and the calls and things. Because there are good people up here that are looking forward to hearing your comments, me being one of them. And I'd love to hear where we're at and some more of the history of this, because I'm new here. I've just been on this thing 3 months, and I don't know all the history, and I'd like to hear, with your wealth of experience, what has been promised and how we're delivering on that, hopefully in a respectful way. Thank you.
So just so I can clarify what you're saying about your deadline. So you need us to make a decision on retirees and what their benefit would be. So you need, I'm not in drop, not our current employees, but our current retired former employees that are not working in the district. So you need to know what the HIS benefit and also those under 65.
Correct. And that's if you choose an action that changes the current funding mechanism that you have in place now for
Right.
July 1st.
Okay, so the decision that we need to make quickly is regarding the HIS. And if we're going to remain status quo for our current retirees.
And for retirees that are under 65 that are getting a contribution based on their years of service, because we take that amount and we decrease their premium based on their contribution.
Is this a one-time-a-year thing, or if we decided to implement starting on September 1st, do I just need to back it up 6
Yeah,
weeks?
Yep,
So this June date that you're giving me and saying I need to do this by June something or other to have a July 1
that's for July 1.
implementation.
Correct.
I can pick any implementation date,
Yes,
correct?
and we just back it up accordingly. You could pick 1/1/26 if, yeah.
So, Madam Chair, maybe Mr. Calderon or somebody, I mean, I know, but I'm sure nobody wants to really hear it from me, knows what happened in 2015? Would you like to, or you want me to share what happened in 2015? So what happened in 2015? In 2015, prior to 2015, in 2014, prior to that date, it was part of the MCEA bargaining agreement. It was included in the bargaining agreement. It was also a piece of it that was included in the Ask Me agreement. So there was language in the agreement that talked about a percentage of your insurance as a retiree being paid based on years of service. That was in the contract then. In May of 2015, after a negotiation session with the bargaining units, that language was changed. It was changed and voted on by your memberships in those two bargaining units, and then it was ratified by the board. It was changed again in November of 2015. The whole reason this came up in 2015 is because it became apparent, it was brought to the board's attention, that there were a large number of retirees over the age of 65 that were not on Medicare. What they were doing was, because the district was putting the contribution for retirees and paying for that contribution the same as they did for an existing employee, there was no incentive or no reason to go to Medicare. Even if Medicare was cheaper, even if Medicare was a better policy, anything else, some people signed up for Medicare and also signed up for the district insurance, and were sometimes using one and sometimes using the other. But it was a big mess because people who should have been on Medicare, because Medicare is a better, more cost-effective insurance, were not going to Medicare. At the same time, at that period in time, in 2015, the cost of regular Medicare was $105 a month. The state was paying the $5 a month for years of service, which meant if you had 21 years of service, that you got the state subsidy would pay 100% of that 105. 21 years at $5 a month came out to the 105. The district decided at that point in time that they would match the HIS that came from the state to give people a pot of money that maybe they could use to buy a supplement. At that point in time, if anybody remembers back then, there were Donald White was here, there were all kinds of seminars, all kinds of meetings. You could make an appointment, come in, look at your particular situation, see where you were, what kind of insurance you were using, compare Medicare to what your current insurance was, and see where you needed to land. That was the piece that happened in 2015. At the same time in 2015, when that language was removed from the two bargaining contracts, this policy for retiree health insurance was adopted. So it puts it, as this policy being adopted, it puts it in a position where if the bargaining unit is bargaining off on the side, that isn't something that a normal citizen sitting at home has access to find out what's happening to their retiree health insurance if it's part of the bargaining contract. By making it a part of policy making, it puts it in a position where there will be a workshop or more than one workshop. There will also be an advertising piece where in one with plenty of notice, the state specified notice as to this is what the new policy will be. Then there will be a final read, so it gives the public a chance to come in and say what they want. In this case, as we're looking at this as policy, since that's where it sits, this meeting here today is a workshop. It hasn't even been yet to the 2 meetings that it needs to happen in order for it to make any change to it. There's an advertising review, which we call the first read, and there's a second final review, which is the final read. So those are the 2 more pieces that are coming there. Right now, when the state raised their state health insurance subsidy to $7.50, Medicare right now, pretty much in this area, starting out costs $185 a month. That means you need 25 years of service, and with 25 years of service, the state subsidy of $185 will pay for your basic Medicare. The statistic is in the state of Florida that 40% of the people who are on Medicare buy a supplement program. The other 60% either don't buy a supplement program and just stay with bare Medicare, or they're on a Medicare Advantage plan. So that's where we're sitting. Thank you.
Did you want to say anything, Superintendent?
I wanted to make sure you all had an accurate timeline if we wanted to, in order to get the policy through the entire length. To Mrs. Roberts' point, April 1st could be a workshop, April 15th for first review, May 13th second review, and then an adoption. So that does give you some time to be able to work through this, should you choose.
Mr. Superintendent,
Yes.
and those dates are, yes, you could do that. If you choose those dates, I would just encourage the board to pick a different effective date, because we would not have the time to program Bentec and to meet the FRS deadlines for July 1st, 2025. But like Mrs. Roberts, like I stated earlier, the board can make a decision when that funding mechanism were to change, if at all, at any time in the future.
So do you want to discuss the HIS supplement and for retirees only? Or do we want to wait and get more information and have a more robust discussion at a later time?
Well, I feel like the only information that we're waiting for is for additional information from our current employees that are on the investment plan. That's the additional information that we need to make a decision moving forward on our current employees that are not retired. So, I mean, I feel fine. I've already told you how I think about the retirees, but I guess the only question in my mind would be, is it $5 or $250?
So do we want to discuss that?
Are we gonna have public comment at any point?
After we have our discussion, if we're going to make a decision today about the $5 or the $250. After that, we'll hear from the public.
Okay, just because at the first workshop, we had no public comment. I would like to hear from the public before any decision is made.
All right, we will have public comment. It will be 1 hour, and I think we'll be able to make it because we do not have as many cards as 1 hour would take up. So if I call your name, I'm going to call you the person who's speaking and then the next person up. Virginia Skinner, followed by Christine Messerana.
Madam Chair, Mr. Superintendent, school board members, staff, and also all of my fellow colleagues here. I want to say first, thank you for listening to us, and I truly, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for your comments and what you have shared here. For some of you who don't know me, I am a proud graduate of Martin County Schools, and I say that often, and I share that because that is a pride that I carry with me. I started in 1991 as a teacher here, and I was hired actually by some individuals in the room who have been here much longer than the 30 years that we talk about. We have many, many employees, retirees who worked over 40 years in this district and still dedicate their time and energy to the students of Martin County. As I said, I started in 1991, and part of the hiring was shared with me at that time was about the benefit package that was offered here in Martin County. I was at that time being recruited by St. Lucie County and Palm Beach County for positions to teach math and English. I say that because I was extremely proud to return to my alma mater, South Fork High School at the time. After that, I became an assistant principal after 15 years or so of teaching, and that at that time I was responsible for part of the hiring and interviewing process for many of the employees that came to the school district and to the certain schools. As part of that, I also continued, you talked about the history, we talked about that in Martin County there was a benefit package that was clearly unique and special to the employees here. And so we used that not only to recruit, but also to retain individuals. Unfortunately, I retired a few years back, and yes, it's hard to say that leaving a job that you've given 30 years of your heart, blood, and soul to is an easy thing to do. But what I did at that time recognized that for family purposes, I needed to retire. Part of my planning and part of my husband and I's planning was the financial promise at the time that we would have insurance throughout the time until I reached Medicare. And there are others. I am one of the 26 that are involved in here that fall into that time frame of where we are. I do recognize the financial impact on the district. I do recognize the information that we were provided for years about our retirement and how to help us determine retirement. I also recognize that there will be those of us who will give 30 or more years that will fall in that gap, that I appreciate the comments that were made about valuing us. And I ask, again, as you look at this, to continue and to implore you to look at different options for us and for those of us who fall into those different situations. That's from my perspective as an individual who falls into that one category.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask you to please not clap until the end, please. Christine Messerano, followed by Deborah Jones.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for taking the time to listen to our concerns. I am a fairly recent retiree from Martin County Schools after serving special needs students in a self-contained unit for 23 years. I would like to respectfully request that you reconsider your plan to reduce retiree health benefits and subsidies. I certainly understand the need to save money, but it shouldn't be at the expense of those of us who have faithfully served the district for many years. We have served and have expected to receive this benefit ever since we came to Martin County. I'm in the pool that just turned 65 and just started on Medicare and received my first subsidy. To have the subsidy reduced now and eventually eliminated would create a financial hardship that is just not fair. As you can imagine, a lot of planning and calculating goes into deciding when would be the right time to retire and how things would be structured. These plans and decisions were made take into account the promised benefits. Throughout our careers in Martin County, we faithfully completed our job responsibilities and honored our obligations under our contracts. It is only right and fair that the district would uphold their end of the contract, now changed to policy. It is especially hard to have the things that were promised taken away once we are retired and on fixed incomes. Over the years, we stayed in Martin County despite salaries that are lower than neighboring counties and in other industries because of the promise of these generous benefits. While it's true that neighboring districts do not offer this, their higher salaries make up for it. In addition, another thing to consider is that many younger teachers are listening to this and have been with Martin County since they graduated and have stayed despite the lower salaries, thinking they will get these benefits after 30 years of service. I predict that many will go elsewhere if this is phased out. Please rethink this plan that would cause hardship for so many of us who worked hard to make this district successful for so many years. Thank you so much for your kind consideration.
Thank you. Deborah Jones, followed by Missy Campbell.
Good afternoon, school board members. It's an honor to be here. I've never been in this beautiful building before. I am a current retiree of 3 years, and I just loved working for the Martin County School at Port Salerno and working with the special needs students. I'm not a speaker in front of people, so this is a big deal for me. Try to get through it. Anyway, I just ask that you please not take our subsidiaries away or reduce them, because when I retired, it was planned in with our finances, and to take it away would be a hardship. I knew it would get like this.
Take your time.
I'm sorry. I just ask that you would just think about keeping what was promised to the people who were retiring and who were in drop, that they would get their subsidiaries, and that you would consider maybe letting the new hires, if you want to do that to the new hires, not give them those benefits, then let them decide if they want to work here in Martin County or not. I just thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Missy Campbell, followed by Leslie Kingsley.
Good afternoon. I am Missy Campbell. I'm a product of the Martin County School District and a former teacher here for 34 years. I'd like to address some of the concerns with you. And first of all, I want to say that when I say you, I'm not talking about you as an individual. I'm talking about the Martin County School Board, the Martin County School District, because this is not really personal necessarily to each of you individually, whereas it's very personal to me. I began teaching in 1985, 40 years ago. At that time, to be honest, retirement was not really on my mind. I was told that the school district was small and couldn't really compete with surrounding salaries, but they offered a wonderful retirement package. So at the ripe old age of 23, this didn't seem important, but now I know I was wrong. I went to speak to your HR person and your retirement expert in 2014. He explained that I would have insurance for life and a subsidy of $5 a year from the Martin County School District to assist with Medicare. I entered DROP, and sadly for me, I was part of that group that could only do DROP for 5 years. Then in 2015, after I was already committed in DROP, things changed. Now I had to go to Medicare at 65. I didn't have a problem with that since I would still have my health insurance and my subsidy to help with supplements. I've been told that the subsidy part was negotiated out of contract language and made board policy. I guess that means that now you just vote on that at your discretion. And I didn't know about this. I said, I understand it, that you said it was posted someplace. Nobody contacted me, even though you have all my contact information, to let me know that you might be taking some of my $150 away when I turn 65. Educators by nature, we're planners. I'm a super planner. And I planned for my future based on the information that I had. And now it can all be changed. I'm 62, and if my insurance is taken away, I will have to find a full-time job with insurance so that I can afford insurance. Otherwise, I would have to pay up to $1,300 a month for insurance. I've had many discussions with many of you and the superintendent, and I know that teacher retention is very important and critical in Martin County and actually throughout the country. If you think it's a problem now, you will see what will happen if you go back on your word. Nobody wants to work for an employer who goes back on their word. We have earned what we were contractually promised. I know for a fact that I went above and beyond for the children in my care. The savings that I have seen of the $2.2 million over 10 years is $220,000 a year is not much compared to your overall budget, but $150 out of my budget is huge. Do the right thing and grandfather us in and change the policy and do it so I don't have to come here every 5 or 10 years to talk to you about this again. Thank you so much.
Hold your clapping, please. Leslie Kingsley, followed by Gary Owen.
Hi, my name is Leslie Kingsley. I taught in Martin County for 39 years. I'm also a member of the insurance committee for the last 25 years. I'm speaking to you today as a retired teacher. I attended my first board meeting in 1983. That was the first time I heard the promise of paid insurance for retirees. I continued to hear it when our pay each year lagged behind Palm Beach County and St. Lucie County. Don't worry, they said. We can't keep up with the bigger districts, but we will cover your insurance when you retire. For decades, that was repeated to calm the fears of our low pay. Serve the children of Martin County for 30 years, and you will eventually get your money in the form of retiree insurance payments. I was also there in 2015 when sick leave payout and retiree insurance was restructured. Again, we were told not to worry. It's just a little structure difference, a little bit less, but if you stay here for 30 years, you'll reap the benefits, literally. One question that hasn't been answered, if you knew in 2015 and you promised in 2015, why didn't you budget for this? You know, our ages, our years of possible retirement, where's the money? Or is this just a choice not to use the money when you reiterated that you were making changes? So please show us you care. I don't think you really realize the impact you're going to have on those who gave their best years to the district. We've now seen the proposals and heard the discussions, and the option is 5 years. You know, we're not talking about school desks or paper. We're talking about people's lives and this money that you promised us for the last 40 years if you worked here. We all upheld our end. We gave our best years to Martin County for decades, and the district has benefited. Everyone wants to come here for their children's education. We also planned for our retirement on the decades of lower than average salaries and your promise. In this stage of our lives now, we just can't re-budget because you don't want to keep that promise. Please, I beg you, please find a way to grandfather us in. Or, and I don't even want to say this, go to 10 years, not 5 years. I don't like it. We'll give up lifetime promise for 10 years. You still are on the winning end of it, of that compromise. Sell the old school board building. That land is a gold mine. Rearrange funds. Stall on other expenditures. Try something, anything. But please show Martin County that you do have integrity and decency to keep your promise for your employees. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary Owen, followed by Marty Balicki.
Madam Chair, esteemed members of the board, Mr. Superintendent, thank you for this opportunity. Before I get started, I just want to say thank you to all of our educators for your hard work, your sacrifice, because if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here today, and I wouldn't be the person that I am today without our educators. So kudos to all of you. I appreciate all the hard work that you do. So why am I here? I am here to be a resource because I've been in this industry for 18 years in the insurance industry, life, health, and Medicare. I've been here for, 38, 40 years on the Treasure Coast. So I know Martin County very well. I know Treasure Coast very well. And educators come to me and come to my office. By the way, we have 2 offices, and one's right behind Key West Diner, in case you don't know where that's at. We're right behind there. And when we meet with retiring educators, they are confused as heck and don't know which way to go. And they can't predict the future. So one thing I am, I'm not an educator, but I do educate on Medicare. I am a certified Medicare insurance planner. We do help consumers and beneficiaries with their Medicare insurance planning because it is complicated. I always tell my agent, I have 500 agents, 12 field managers across this country. And when I speak to consumers turning 65, the most important thing is the decisions you make today could last a lifetime, so it's important to get it right the first time. So let me be a resource if I can. If you find a cause for me to be a resource, teachers, you can always reach out to my office, contact me directly because I am passionate about protecting your quality of life, your quality of health. If you don't get it right, I have seen so many times I could cry the number of times I've seen people make the wrong decisions. It's cost them plenty. So we're here. Let me be a resource. And again, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Marty Bilecki, followed by Larry Green.
I'm also a former student at Martin County High School and came back to teach for 37 years. I'm proud of what I did. I remember some teachers made an impact on my life. I remember, and Wanda Yarborough, Don Wallen, Joanne Hunt, all made great impact for me. Just think in your life, what
Please
teacher...
hold your clapping. Thank you.
You can clap for me. Just think about your life, what teachers have made an impact in your life. Now, just think about that, and then think about turning around and cutting their supplement $2.50, or just stripping this medical stipend. Most people forget that teachers are out of workforce for 4 years as they get their degree. Now, I just saw where there's 4 choices to abolish or lower our medical stipend. There's one choice not listed. Keep what we have. Keep the status quo. At least 5 superintendents and the past school boards have signed to have this stipend. Why? Because they value teachers. And what I hear up here, I think you also value teachers. I really do. It is interesting that this proposal came up like this after the election. And many school retirees, which these proposals affect, were not notified about these meetings. I just found out about it last week. Circa back in the 80s, the school board was hurting for money, and we agreed to take no raise in order to have this insurance. Like the price of eggs, insurance keeps on going up. Not even our local firefighters or policemen have to fight for their benefits. What is ironic is that the majority of firefighters and policemen are not required to have a 4-year degree. For years, we have struggled from poor salaries. Florida ranks at the bottom of 50 states, and Martin County does not rank very well in the state. To compensate for this disparity, a medical insurance stipend was put in place long ago. We live in one of the wealthiest counties in the state of Florida. We have the happiest seaside town in America. Look at the home values, Jupiter Island, Sewell's Point, and even Citrus Grove. $800,000 homes. We have a tax base. So the question, Witham Field, look at all the executive jets. Where are all our monies? The last 8 years, we have approved an increase in extra school taxes by millions of dollars. In the past election, $83 million was approved. All right, we have money to pay for these supplements. And please indeed vote no for all these proposals. Keep the status quo in place. Thank you.
Larry Green, followed by Tim Black.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, school board members, Mr. Main. My name is Larry Green, and I served this school district for 38 years as a teacher and an administrator. Let me start by thanking you for your kind words and listening to us tonight. We're in this situation today because right now our legislators are taking 23% of public school money and diverting it to private school vouchers, charter schools, and school choice. Where would we be and other school districts be if the voters did not vote in a millage every 5 years? That's the issue. I stood before the board 10 years ago over the same issue, and here we are again. I watched a video from last month's meeting. And I heard you say about taking it away from retirees, that would be harsh and uncaring. Also, you said, we don't want to pull the rug from under their feet. I agree with you. Speaking for all of the people in this room, we are the people that built this school district. We are the people that stayed in the school district for all those years. We are the people that made the district an A-rated school district that was the marvel of all the counties in our area. We are the people we are the reason why people moved here. Once again, you did not create this problem. Our elected leaders in the state have put you in a jam. But ultimately, it's your task to do what's right and keep the promise the school board made for retiree benefits for the great men and women who serve the school district. Thank you for what you do and for allowing me to share my thoughts.
Thank you. Tim Black, followed by Kelly Ricardo.
Hello, my name is Tim Black. I was a teacher in Martin County High School and South Fork High School and taught history. And I want to thank Lee for giving us a real good historical lesson from 10 years ago. I can remember I was up here making a point of saying we should do the F plan, and no one on in the administration even knew what that was, okay? But we do have an F plan for supplemental Medicare problem. You know, I was really kind of tempted. You're going to get rid of the stipend totally for my age group. I'm going to be 78, and you're going to get rid of that in 2030, which is 5 years, just as we're going into, actuarially, the most difficult decade of when we need more insurance and we're going to be needing more medical care. And you're going to get rid of that. So if I can borrow a little inspiration for you tonight from Psalm 71, verse 9, cast me not off in the time of old age. Forsake me not when my strength faileth. And that's what you're going to be doing to us in 2030 when we'll be in our 80s and you're going to cut this off. That should be considered. I understand what you're doing is very clever. You're basically, since the state gave us $750, you've knocked our $250 off of us, and we're basically back, we're at square one. But then you're cutting off in 5 years the supplement when we really are going to probably need that. Actuarially, Lee, I think you know that. You know, when we get into our 80s, that's when we're going to see more and more medical problems. So don't desert us, okay? Don't throw us overboard. Give us a lifeboat. I'm with Marty. I think we should keep what we have. But I also understand that we had this problem back in 2015. It was a mess, okay? And we came up with a compromise that worked very well for a long time. I have the F plan, and I have Medicare, and it's excellent. And I get it from Cigna, from you guys, so I appreciate that. So anyway, think about that. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Kelly Ricardo, followed by Mary Nourian.
Thank you for giving us time to speak. I taught in Martin County School District for 34 years at South Fork High School, and it was almost a yearly decision, conversation with my then husband, whether I would stay in Martin County or seek employment at a neighboring county that paid so much more, upwards of $10,000. Because not only would that affect our daily life at that time, it would affect our retirement for the top 5. So that decision was made over and over and over again based on the promise that I was given. And I see this question not so much as a numbers question. We had a lot of presentation about numbers and how many people and how much money and everything, but the basic question is a moral one. Are you going to honor the promise that was made that kept people like me in this district to make it the district that it is, or are you not? Then you can figure out how to work the numbers. But the basic question is, Are you going to honor that promise? And that's a moral question.
Thank you. Christy Dugas, followed by Joe Flanagan.
You still had Mary Norian in there?
I thought that was Mary Norian.
No, that would be me. I'm Mary Norian.
Okay, who? That was Kelly. Oh, okay, go ahead.
Okay. Board members, Madam Chair, Mr. Maine, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I am Mary Norian, and I'm one of the 117, and I am one of the 26 people that would not have benefited from Plan A because I would not have made it there. I understand you have budget cuts to make, but in this case, I ask you to please see the person and not just the budget cut in front of you. As a retiree in the under 65 group, this will have a negative impact on my budget, and I know it will affect so many others similarly. Skin in the game, that is what we were told as we worked through our many years in the Martin County School District. The longer you have your skin in the game, the more you will be rewarded when you retire. Work hard, care about your community, and serve your students, and if you retire with 30 or more years, you will get 100% of your health insurance paid. 30 or more years is something. That is not easy to achieve, and many do not. I am proud that I worked in Martin County School District for those years. I worked alongside the most hardworking people I have ever met. Educators that worked well past the time it was to clock out in order to meet the needs of their students. I participated in many special events, including the curriculum nights, fundraisers, after-school clubs, summer reading camp, moving up ceremonies, even Saturday morning trainings. I still care about my community and the students in it. My grandkids are part of this amazing district. I'm sorry, I am very nervous. They're part of this amazing district, and I want them to have the best teachers possible. I want them to have teachers that make it a goal to stay for 30 years. My heart is full when I volunteer at their school and I see our future. I'm asking you to continue to invest in the future because when you reward retirees, that is exactly what you're doing. You're investing in the future of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Christy Dugas, followed by Joe Flanagan.
Hello, esteemed board, Mr. Superintendent. My name is Christy Dugas. I am a self-work teacher of 12 years, 7 of them being here in Martin County. Thank you, Mrs. Russell, for saying what I've been thinking since this has come out. But what about me? And why should I stay? I understand the urgency to address the current retirees and those who are going to be retiring in 2030, but please consider the new teachers. I know I'm the only one here that is of my age and stuff like that, and I am thinking about retirement even though it's in 2050. What I have that my other colleagues don't have behind me is time, though. I have time to decide whether I'm going to stay in Martin County or stay in the profession altogether. I love my students, I love my school, I love the people that I work with, but I need to know that I'm valued. Please don't forget the new teachers in your decision. Please don't make this change. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe Flanagan?
Madam Chair, if the members of the public could not address the board members individually, we've had that come up several times. They can address us as a board, but not individually. Thank you.
Joe Flanagan, 39 years in education, I believe 33 or 34 of them. A history lesson, as I've heard many people, Mr. Balicki also, and Larry Green mentioned it. In 2007, Martin County had 100% of all of our schools were A schools. And then in 2012, we still had 16 A schools. So again, and the people that allowed that to occur are the people that are sitting here. And we built the foundation that you had in there. My greatest concern too is, as Christy just said, honestly, there is not a teacher shortage. Absolutely not a teacher shortage. There are teachers everywhere in the state of Florida. They're just no longer in our profession. There are many teachers there. But what you need to understand also was, and I think it was Marty that said this earlier, It was in the late 80s, early 90s, where the choice was made before class size reduction was in place, was the board said, teachers, we can give you a 3% raise across the board, but we will increase your class sizes to 30 to make up that difference. And the union overwhelmingly voted no pay raise, keep our class sizes small, because that's what Martin County education is all about. Do not sacrifice and balance the budget on the backs of the retirees.
Thank you. That ends public comment. Want to say anything regarding what we heard? Or do we just want to move to the next agenda item?
Well, I think we have to do something, otherwise we're not doing anything, because this is a workshop that's dealing with the policy. So I think if we have a board consensus on anything, then that can move forward into the advertising review, et cetera. If we don't have a consensus, then I guess we would be coming back for another workshop. I would still like to see current employees, their age, their years of service in the district, and whether they're in the investment plan or the retirement plan. I think that will give us some idea of what our whole thing, and I personally believe that the retirees that are under the age of 65 should continue getting their 6,500 until they reach Medicare age. So that's the 117, which includes the 26. And as far as the drop people go, I believe that the drop people, the people who are currently on drop, who I view as retired with the date that they're going to not come to work anymore, I think that 66 should continue to receive the 6,500 for the period of time that was specified on that chart, which comes out to the first group with a cost not adding to the group, comes out with a cost of 2.155. The second group comes out at 648, which is a total of 2.803. If the board agreed to doing that we could adjust the policy that would have language that would, in essence, grandfather in that 117 and the 66. Then when we get the information back from Mr. Calderon about the current employees, which includes employees that are on the investment plan that haven't indicated when they're going to retire, that we can make a decision on modifying the policy again. In 2015, we modified the policy twice, or we had two discussions to it, I guess, is what we really did. So that's my preference, but I don't know if that has any interest from the board.
So my preference would be that we go ahead and let our retirees know that they're grandfathered in. So that includes our actual retirees, who are the 117, and everyone who's receiving the HIS. So they no longer work for the district. I think that, as one of the speakers said, the majority of our newer teachers are on the investment plan. So I think excluding them from this conversation and not having it as a whole. So if we're going to develop policy that includes the 66 people that are currently in drop, what is that? That's 8 years is the max right now. So then we should consider a minimum of 8 years out for all employees, regardless of what plan and whether they're eligible for drop or not. But we don't know, again, we don't know what those numbers are. I'd also like to talk to Mr. Harmon. I know I posed a couple of questions to him about language in the policy. We need to get our dates right because we're going to have different employees depending on when they were hired. So we need to make sure that we get it right. So I think we're not going to be able to create a policy tonight, I don't think. because there are still so many questions. But I do think we can give assurance through consensus from the board, at least for the retired group of employees.
You're talking about the 117.
117,
And then
and
for the HIS, are you talking about maintaining the HIS at $5?
that's a discussion that I think we should have. I didn't bring that up in the last, well, I wasn't here, but I didn't bring up the 250. I don't know who brought that up, but we can have that discussion for sure.
When I read this policy, the second paragraph, if you'll indulge me, I want to read it, and I have a reason for reading it. Any contribution toward retiree insurance will be at the discretion of the school board. Nothing contained herein creates a right to lifetime health care benefits or subsidy for retirees, their surviving spouses, and their dependents. The school board may contribute none, some, or all of the costs toward retiree medical coverage. The percentage or amount of payment toward retiree medical coverage has varied over the years and may continue to do so in the future. The school district's contribution toward retiree medical coverage is subject to unilateral change. When I read this, it totally doesn't obligate us at all, and that isn't my intention. We need to create language that doesn't say this if we're not going to make changes. So, as a fairly new board member, when I read this, I think to myself, at any time, we can take it away. But if that isn't our intention, we shouldn't have this in the policy. So that is my issue with this policy. We need to create language that lines up with our intention. This language shows an intention of tomorrow we can take it away. So that is why I have an issue with the language in this policy, because listening to everyone out there, promised for lifetime. That's not what it says in here. We need, and I'm not saying what that language should be, but this language does not comport with people telling us that they were promised it for life. So that is just my feeling about it, that if we're not going to be able to bring it up without the public getting enraged because you promised us, our language doesn't shore up with that. So as a very literal person, I would like the language to reflect our intentions. This policy doesn't reflect what we're talking about. So that is my dilemma here. I want the language to be what our intention is. Thank you.
So I think that language was added, or that language was not developed by the school board, but by attorneys. And
there you go.
And I will say, I mean, we have been not on this issue or anything related to insurance, but we have been advised in the past that no board can obligate a future board to something that, like, so we can't, whatever we say, if the board changes, a new board can change it. You can't obligate a future board to a decision that they can never, ever, ever change. So I think that language was added. That's why I really want Terry Harmon, the district attorney, to look at this, because there are so many things and that I think he needs to look at in how we word this. So hopefully we will not have to look at this again. And that when it is at a certain point in time, whatever we decide as a board, is it going to go away in the future? What's that time frame look like? And I have had this conversation with the superintendent about what does it look, I mean, businesses do it all the time when they're sales are down, which, you know, our enrollment has dropped considerably, as enrollments have nationwide. I mean, some states like California and New York have dropped double digits in their enrollment. And it's, Florida is no different. There are a few of our larger school districts that have seen an increase in enrollment, but the majority of us in Florida have seen a decrease in enrollment, and in most states. So that's just a reality. Birth rates are down. There's a lot of factors that go into why enrollment is dropping. School choice is one of those. But I really feel like we need to get the language right with Mr. Harmon. I think if there's questions, then we need to ask those questions so that the superintendent can relay it. I just don't think we're going to be able to formulate a policy tonight that is going to, you know, that is not going to change in the future.
So the language I was looking at to change the policy was the line that says for retirees under the age of 65 and not Medicare eligible, and then goes on to say the school board will pay a percentage of blah, blah, blah. If we added in there, retired on or before February 1st, 2025. So then that line would read, for retirees under the age of 65 and not Medicare eligible, retired on or before February 1st, 2025, the board will pay blah, 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 exactly the way the policy is. So that anybody who is in that 117 list who is retired, that, in my head, that policy could move forward, and that gives closure to that group. If we have consensus that we aren't going to take away anything from the 117, right, that would take care of the 117, leaving the drop on the side for a minute. Then on the next page where it talks about retiree insurance age 65 and over or Medicare eligible, and it talks about the A, B, or C qualification, A, that they're getting, mainly that they have insurance and that they retired on or before December 31, 2015. If we added a C in there that said the retiree is receiving a Martin County health insurance subsidy on or before February 1st, 2025, then it maintains that $5 per month. It maintains the status quo for all of these people that are currently getting a health insurance subsidy. The cost of that is that $1 million, but it gives some clarity to people who are retired, whether they're over 65 getting a health insurance subsidy at $5 a month, whether they're under 65 and they're getting $6,500 towards their insurance, whether they're going to retire, whether they're it isn't a 5-year period, it isn't anything. It's going until they reach age 65, and you have to be retired. I mean, I think if we made those two changes to the policy, that anything we make after that is taken care of, and I took the drop people out to help you, Mrs. Powers, in dealing with the...
This language includes, because we're not negotiating for our active employees. We are negotiating we are developing a policy for our retirees.
Correct.
So all of our current employees would fall under this as well. No matter when they retire.
If you change the language... Oh, sorry, Don, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't want to be rude and interrupt. My recommendation from staff, being your director of risk and benefits, is I know we've been very focused on these 117 retirees under age 65, and we're very focused on the ones that are currently in drop. As you recall, the figures that we've presented to you last month and again tonight is based on a snapshot in time. That was based on the reports that we had in September of 2024 when the board first discussed this. My recommendation would be that we also include anybody that has entered drops since September of 24 or those that have retired since September of 24. My recommendation would be for anybody that falls in this category and would use the date of 6/30/25. So we would include anybody, those handfuls that may elect to retire or have retired since September. Just because we've had some people that have entered drops since September.
I understand that. And the reason that I was making that a February 1st date, et cetera, was, well, first of all, the reason I was taking the drop piece out of it completely was based on Mrs. Powers' discussion that she wanted to include the people on the investment plan with the people on the retirement plan and not make a decision about those 66 people. And I understand that this policy is titled retiree health insurance. And I don't think there's anything wrong with specifying that, okay, if you retired on or before February 1st, 2025, I consider you a current retiree. I consider that's where you are right now. You're getting a FRS check or you're getting a health insurance subsidy check. Those are the two things that you're getting right now. If you're under the age of 65 or you're over the age of 65, these are the things that you're getting. And by virtue of getting those things, we've taken that group of people. And yes, I realize that your 117 might actually be a larger number since that was a September date. But rather than cut it off on September, I'm willing to say, okay, if you've retired, you know, whether you retired because it was the end of your drop period or whether you retired because that was it and you had some other kind of situation that you retired for, that's what, I mean, I'm just trying to find a way to kind of give some clarity to people who were kind enough to come out that, okay, this is the way that part of the policy will look. If you're one of the 117, or if you're one of the group of people who's receiving a health insurance subsidy, if the board has some consensus that they're willing to continue that on, if you made those two changes to the policy, you would have that clarity that that's continuing on. Then what we do after that for the other pieces, with the attorney's help, with adding another weird paragraph about how we can do whatever we want, whenever we want to do it kind of language, that's a whole nother discussion. But at least if you were kind enough to come out, if you knew that this was affecting you, if this is giving you heart palpitations, et cetera, you would have some closure and kind of know where you are. That's where I was sitting with it.
So I just would have one question about that date. What about, are we creating another group of people? What about the people that retire after February 1st and we don't have this, there's no policy that applies to them until some future date.
Sure.
So what happens on retirement day for them?
And
I think it should be June 30th because we would have our policy in place by June 30th for sure. I mean, we're talking about a few months. I don't know how many people are in the pipeline. Some are turning 65 before that are in the 117. So I think it's going to be kind of a wash financially because some will be going off of the 6,500 onto the to Medicare and then to the subsidy. So
you're saying change the date to retired on or before June 1st, 2025?
June 30th.
June 30th,
June 30th.
2025?
2025. It'll capture a few more people, but then it also will not create a gap before we get this policy completed.
And I'm okay with that, and then I'm okay, so would you then change the paragraph C on the second page? Receiving a health insurance subsidy on or before?
I have a question.
Yes, for me?
After you
okay.
answer her. Did you answer?
Did that make sense?
What were you changing C to? I'm sorry, I didn't
So I
write it down.
added a C after the A and B, and I had receiving a health insurance subsidy on or before 6/1/20, it would be 6/30/2025.
Correct.
And that would cover that would do
Yep.
the same thing. It's covering the same group,
Right.
correct?
Yeah, because we're entering open enrollment period, we're entering the end of the 24-25 school year where we're going to have employees that are be thinking about retirement. So if you extend it out through June 30th, 2025, you're making those people safe as well because they're making a decision as well.
Correct.
So I think that'd be great.
And then I think, my thought is if we do that, then put that up for an advertising review in
February.
And then we do a final read for that in March, that then we've taken care of people who are retired. I mean, people who are retired, is
Correct.
anybody who's
Yep.
retired before June 30th,
Right.
correct?
Yep.
So if you're in drop and your retirement date hits on May 15th, right, that you then are included in this group,
Correct.
correct? And then knowing that we are going to get additional information and make a decision more holistically to deal with
Those after 7/125.
those after 7/125. And then that helps so that people can go back to play golf and not have to come with a red shirt.
Well, I would also think that we could have, by our next board meeting, have this reviewed by our attorney and
Sure.
have proposed language for that group. So we can get the data that we were asking for by our next regular board meeting and have a draft policy by then.
Except we don't know, since we don't have the data, right? And we don't know what option 1, 2, 3, and 4 would be for whether you're drop, whether you're not drop, et cetera. I think it's going to take another workshop to get some consensus on what to do with that. But at least if we can agree that anybody who's retired before 6/30, that we maintain the status quo for them, that at least we have a policy that's in place, we have some closure on that issue. And if the policy, and I do believe that if we make those two changes, add a C and add a clause on the first page, that it should go to the attorney. And with the understanding for the attorney to understand this is our intent, that we're covering people to this period of time. And they may tweak that language a little bit, but at least we would know by the first read, this is what the language looks like to cover everybody who's retired before 6/30/2025. Knowing that we need additional information, superintendent has to have a chance to look at it, go through it, et cetera, make a recommendation, give us several options for what to do on the other thing. And if it means that we go through and modify the policy again, we modify the policy again. I mean, I think but at least
Yeah.
we've gotten
I
somewhere.
just don't want to create another gap for employees that may retire if we're not done with this. I mean, I feel urgency to get this policy in place so employees, our current employees, not just our retirees, but our current employees know what to expect. And that's why I'm saying, I don't see why we can't have a draft discussion, if there's questions, if there's issues at our next board meeting. Why can't we? We can still talk about it if it's on the agenda at our next board meeting.
Okay.
That way, it'll be out there if we have current employees that want to comment on what that language looks like, they will have multiple opportunities before it starts the process. But I don't know that it's really good to have multiple policies on retiree and then to have to start the 3-month process all over again to modify the policy. So I would just like to put a little urgency on this and have it, if we need to have it at every single meeting that we have between now and adoption of the final policy, we just do.
That's fair.
The numbers that you have, are they very current or are they
Oh, you're referring to
aged?
what we've talked about? Yeah, those were as of September 2024 when we first started discussing it, so.
So will we get updated numbers? Because we're basing decisions on numbers that are,
Well, I like to what Mrs. Powers had stated, it's going to be a wash. It's going to be similar.
Okay.
We can do whatever you want. From
like,
what
will
I'm
the
hearing.
117 change? Will
Yeah, the
66
117, yeah, I mean, you might have a couple more or less, but I think in the spirit of what you're trying to accomplish, making everybody whole, keeping them whole, if you stick by that June 30th, 2025 date, we've got that under control.
Okay.
And what I'm hearing from the board is that really, we kind of need to take a look at those that are in the investment plan who may retire within the next 8 years, similar to drop. That's how I'm kind of envisioning it. That's going to take a little bit of time. We've got to sort through that. But that would be for something that we can put together for you all. But I think the key is for people making that decision, everybody here, to make sure that they're going to be taken care of the way that the policy is currently written, as long as you're a retiree prior to, on or before June 30th, 2025.
Okay, thank you.
I'm concerned that there's going to be an unintended consequence with that, that it's going to now cause people who weren't originally going to retire by that date to now retire by that date to secure their benefits. And so then, how many people are going to do that who would have stayed and maybe stayed 5 more years to work for us? We're already needing teachers. To do that and then to encourage them to retire early, because, I mean, I can't fault them for that.
Well, I mean, it would obviously be, what do you, which part of it do you think would, I mean, I think not addressing it, I mean, obviously, the people that are in drop are in drop. I think it's the people that are in the investment plan where there's not, we don't know what that looks like. We don't know what the assurances we can provide because we don't have the data. So it's that segment of the population. Obviously, there's going to be, depending on the age of the employee, where they are reaching retirement, where they are reaching the minimums for retirement and HIS and all of the things that we have, to, if they retired, I mean, it would obviously be a financial decision on their part if they were going to retire to collect $6,500, or if they were going to continue to work at their current salary and get the benefit and get the $6,500 then. So there's, yeah, it's, I mean, obviously it's a, I think we should be more urgent in getting this policy completed so that people know.
Because you want to make whole the people that are currently retired, and then also anybody that enters drop or has retired by June 30th, 2025.
No, that wasn't what
No, that
we
wasn't
were
it.
talking about. So we weren't talking about
Okay.
people who are currently entering drop. We were saying that that's the one that we need more information on. So we're saying the policy right now, the way it's written, has nothing to do, has no mention of anything for drop.
Right, okay.
It just talks about retirees and it talks about health insurance subsidy. And when you're saying that the piece that we're missing and the piece we need to look at is just the investment plan piece, I don't think that's true.
You
I
wanna
think
look
we
at the
have
drop, too.
retirement plan people
Okay.
who started working when they were 25, they've worked 30 years, they're 35, or they're 55 years old now, and they're deciding whether they want to enter drop. At 55, if you enter drop, that's going to push you to 63 and leave you a 2-year gap. So what do you do with those people? So I think that that's why, when you're looking at the data, you need their age, you need their years of service, and you need which plan they're in.
Okay, I apologize. I understand.
So do you want to, are you okay with changing, with adding language for that date and then moving it forward? Because it's still got to come to a first read. Now, keep in mind that when we started talking about this in September, it took 4 months to get us to this point here, the last month, to get information. So I think when we're asking you for information about the employees, the current employees, if that's going to take another 4 months, we will have a gap if we change something that starts on June 30th.
It won't take 4 months to get this information.
So I guess my request would be that we have an updated presentation on the information at our next meeting, which would be our regular February meeting. And then we will talk about it again at our March workshop, and then again at our March regular meeting if we need to. And then until we get this done, we've got to get it done.
So can we do a first read in February with the June 30th?
Yes, we can. We will make it happen.
Adding that language in C and adding that language in,
We will get with Mr. Harmon, and Don will get with the Garen Group, and we will make sure that we have another presentation ready to go for our regular meeting in February.
And the first read should include any information that the attorney and advises us
Sure.
to add. That way, if we take anything away, it's easier to
Sure.
take away than it is to add. So we want more information on the first read than
so maybe
we
instead
get
of,
down the line, we can't.
so maybe instead of doing a first read in February, we should do the first read in March. That will give us a March workshop to have a discussion on how, we'll know what the policy looks like with those two pieces added.
But is there consensus for that, though? Here?
No, we're just discussing it right now.
Okay. That's what I'm
Um,
asking.
But if we push it to March, if we had a March for a first read and then an April for a final read, it gives an extra month and an extra workshop to discuss it as opposed to discussing it as a board meeting, looking at it as a policy with pieces to add to it. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think I'd be on board with that. I'll just be honest with you. I've listened to all the educators in the room and, how they didn't get a raise to preserve the benefits. And I just feel like the goodwill with the teachers is lacking. By adding that date in there, I feel like Mrs. Russell is correct. I feel like that might drive people to retirement. That could cause a shortage of teachers. So I would be opposed to that, just for the record.
Wait, well, you're opposed to June 30th? You're opposed to waiting until March? Or I think it should come in February,
I'm
is what I
opposed to
think.
June 30th, yes.
So what, do you suggest a date or?
I think I would agree with Mrs. Russell, and I would agree to keep this policy the same for now, until something less confusing that doesn't, I don't think the revisions we've talked about is anything I would support.
Wait, the revisions, we haven't made any revisions.
you're
It's
s-
all staying the same.
No, but you're saying that on June 30th, that people have to retire by that date to get the benefit, correct?
No.
Okay, then what was the
No.
June 30th date?
The June 30th date is to make sure that the people that are in the process of retiring don't get caught in a gap. So making sure that before we can get the policy in place for our future retirees. Because
and
there are two pieces of this. There's our current retirees, and then there's our future retirees. And once we have the data, which hopefully we'll have by our next meeting, we'll be able to address the future retirees as well, so that the people that are currently in drop, and then we will address the people that are in the investment plan, because we haven't even talked about them.
And the future retirees may be exactly the same as what the policy is, but it's giving assurances to the people who are retired now that it's not going to change for them. It's not saying, oh, we're going to change it for everybody after this date. We're going to only take care of these people. It's just making sure that the people who are currently receiving something from this policy know that they are going to continue to receive it. That's what the June 30th date.
Or we could keep the policy the same, though. That could be another option, right?
If there's consensus to do that, if there's consensus to not touch the policy at all. I personally think that,
Please.
I personally think that that having dates in a policy and looking forward makes the policy more meaningful for people who are affected by those dates. Because otherwise, 12 years from now, the new board, whoever the new people are going to be right back here having people coming in and talking about this all over again, because there's no dates, there's nothing tied to it. So I mean, I look at that kind of as almost kicking the can down the road of, we're not going to touch it, we'll let somebody else touch it in the future. And I don't think that gives a whole lot of closure to people and a whole lot of assurance to anybody when it's like, yeah, we're not going to do it, we'll let somebody else take care of it. I just think that that's. Mrs. Russell, what do you think?
If we're not planning on changing anything for our current employees, I understand your intention and why you're putting that June 30th date, to assure them, the ones who are the retirees, that nothing's going to change for you, and I completely understand that. But if we have zero intention of changing anything for our current employees, why would we change this at all? If everything just stayed the same.
Because I don't know if it would stay the same. I don't know until you get the data whether it would stay the same. I mean, I don't think you can make a financial decision on, we know what this looks like. We know what current retirees look like for a period that goes out 15 years. We don't know what anything else looks like.
I guess I just feel like they're all watching us, the current employees, and how we handle this.
Of course they are, I hope so.
And if we can't deliver on promises that were made before, I'm worried that people aren't going to trust us. We don't handle this correctly.
Okay.
Okay,
So,
if,
so that's, and I understand that, and I appreciate that, and so that's why I was promoting the June 30th date, so the people who felt for all these years promises were made to them, the Virginia Skinners of the world, all these, the Tim Blacks, everybody who felt that this is what they came here, this is what they stayed for, this is everything else, it's kind of like living up to that promise piece and being sure that, okay, heard you loud and clear, we're taking care of that. We will look at everything else, and it may stay the same. It may stay the same, may get modified, something else may happen, but at least for the people who had those promises, et cetera, that are retired, they would kind of know where they sit. I mean, that's...
And I look at it as we're asking for more information. If we're not changing anything and we're not doing anything with the policy at all, why are we asking for more information?
that's where I'm coming, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't
No, why do, we need more information to make an informed decision. And you're saying don't do anything at all. But we have to have enough information to make a sound financial decision. And that isn't an unfair thing to do, to just be informed financially how we're going to move forward. So before I make any decision, I want to know how it's going to impact us financially, and we don't have that information. So to assure the people in the room that they are not going to be touched, we should put something in there that says that. If we need to, we can remove it at a later time. But I want these folks to know that we're not touching them for the time we're looking to get more information. I can't make a decision without more information. So that, it's unfair to expect anybody to just blanketly say, okay, no problem, we'll deal with the fallout if it financially impacts the district. We shouldn't be doing that. We're the stewards of the money, and I feel like we want to protect our retirees at the same time. But I need more information, so I want to do something that at least assures the people in the room that their retirement is safe. That's what I want to do, and I don't know that we can just leave it alone completely and then find out when he gives us the information that we need to change something drastically. I don't know that, so I want to feel comfortable in that decision-making process, that's all. And I want our retirees to know that they're going to be taken care of. So how do we do that simultaneously? If we do nothing, we're not protecting our financial stability. Yes?
Dawn, when is the drop dead date that you need direction from the board on?
We really need to have the board policy adopted at the March 25th board meeting, because that allows us the appropriate time to do all the programming and to get with FRS for anything that goes into effect on July 1st. And if you use that June 30th, 2025 date, it protects and grandfathers everybody that's in this room and then anybody that may retire by June 30th, 2025, and it provides a peace of mind for those. And then we can take a look at what some other options are for those employees that retire after 7/1. Maybe it's a bonus payout. Maybe it's based on years of service. There's different things that we can talk about.
So if the board gives staff direction now to the point that a couple of the board members have made, that will get you what you need to be able to make your deadlines so that everybody here in the room and others that weren't able to make it today are whole, and allow the board additional time to research this for what we will do moving forward in the future.
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to bring clarification to that because I do believe that it is very important that I hear all of you wanting to protect those that are in the room right now as we gather additional information, but staff has a deadline, so we do need to be able to make this policy change at least through March to then be able to buy additional time, and we will bring this back. I'm okay with staff bringing this back every workshop and every meeting until you get to a place where you all feel comfortable. But I do believe that for the purposes of right now, we need to leave here tonight feeling like all of the individuals are good. Staff has what they need to be able to make the decisions that they need to make. And then you also have the option to continue working through this. I also want you all to know too, I know that there's thought that finances are on your mind, as they should be. Insurance is separate from capital dollars, we know this. But I commit to the board that as we go through the budgetary process moving forward, which we will be starting here very soon, I will be bringing forward cost-saving measures from the district office to cut in other areas. So as you are making your decision financially from a retirement standpoint, an insurance standpoint, I want to take the pressure off the board to know that we will have wiggle room in other areas, because my commitment is to make sure that we have cost savings from a general operating standpoint.
So we don't take a vote, but I would like to know if I have consensus to put the June 30th language into the policy at this time.
So I would say yes, but again, I'm not exactly sure why by our February meeting, we cannot have the data and we cannot have a recommended language that would include all our current employees, our future retirees in that, in the same policy. Why? I don't know why we can't do that, unless there's some sort of reason why we can't get all that information gathered. Individual board members will be able to meet with Mr. Calderon, and the superintendent and the chair can meet with the attorney. We could have I don't see why we can't have proposed language in this policy by our February meeting.
And I agree with you as far as as an advertising review, correct, Mrs. Falls? If we put it as an advertising review for the February meeting, and then when we hear it in February, that's the first read piece, that we would have additional data, additional pieces that have for us option 1, option 2, option 3, option 4, for whatever language piece that would be and what each of those language pieces look like. And I think that that's knowing that from there, we can't make a change in March. If that was the final read in March, we can't. If we're still not satisfied with it, we could either have a special meeting that takes care of it.
We would still have we would have the February regular meeting. We would have the March workshop. We would have the March regular meeting.
So I think Mrs. Falls, correct me, I think what we would have to do is we would have to also advertise as an advertising review at the March workshop. So the March workshop would also have a meeting for the first read, the same way that this other policy that we have tonight is, so that if we do make changes at the February meeting, you have a correct thing to advertise for the March workshop, which then puts us on target for a final read, because you can run those two things concurrently in March, correct? Does that work for everybody?
Yes.
Doesn't work for me, sorry.
Okay, so we do have consensus to go ahead with. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you, Don.
Oh, I have one last question.
Yes.
In order to be appropriately prepared for the February 18th board meeting, can the board provide some direction to staff in terms of what options they would like to see? Are you interested in some figures as to like a runout of the current policy, the way that is structured with years of service, contribution based on active board contribution and medical insurance, the health insurance subsidy? Would you be interested in a bonus, one-time retiree incentive? Like when you retire, you get a certain payout?
Yes.
Yes, to all that.
Yes.
And I think one of the options
Okay.
is to do nothing. What does the cost out look like with the assumptions of, okay, if you had retirees, or if you had current employees that have 13 years of teaching experience, 7 years with the district, what does that look like when they hit 20 years? What does that look like when they hit 25 years? And what does that piece look like? Yeah.
Okay, we could do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. You're back, Don. Updated timeline for employee benefits insurance, RFP for fully insured medical and pharmacy. You
Give me
never
just-
left.
Yeah, I know. Give me just a second. Let me
Yeah,
pull that up.
take
Yeah.
your time. Yep. You want to
Take a break.
Yeah, let's take a 5-minute break.
No, it's
Okay.
not.
Go ahead. Whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'm ready. So board workshop agenda item 3.01 is the updated timeline for employee benefit insurance RFP for fully insured medical insurance and pharmacy. And I just wanted to take this opportunity and just let the board know that based on the January 14th board workshop, the board had directed staff to work together to see if we could work and collaborate and work with the payroll department in order to stretch out that timeline for the RFP process in order to get an additional month of claims that will hopefully be in our favor as we negotiate with the RFP respondents. So I just wanted to share this updated timeline, and kind of long story short, because it's been a late night, was that we were able to do such a thing. And we now have a date of May 22nd in which the benefits department will provide that open enrollment payroll file that comes out of Bentech that incorporates all of the decisions and actions that employees make in Bentech for their active open enrollment. We've got that over to the payroll department by May 22nd. They have been amazing, and it will allow them still to make that June 5th multi-check disbursement date to employees, and will allow our department, Sandy Eckhart, to do that FRS file upload for any changes for that. So I just wanted to let you know that as we go through the RFP process with the Guerin Group leading that we will be able to go ahead and get an additional month of claims.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, controlled open enrollment and choice, Dr. Miller and Lana Barros.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Mr. Superintendent, members of the board. Tracy Miller, Deputy Superintendent. I have Lana Barros here, Director of Choice and Innovation. And we wanted to bring information to you for your consideration about choice programs for school year 25-26. So as you know, resident and non-resident parents have options when requesting to attend a school other than the school that is known as their home zone school. Controlled open enrollment allows parents from any school district in the state, as long as students aren't subject to current expulsion or suspension, to apply through controlled open enrollment in a school that hasn't reached what our board has defined as capacity. Capacities are determined using the Florida Inventory of Schoolhouses, which is known as FISH, and we have set that capacity at 75%. For the current year, all schools, all Martin County School District schools have been what is known as a controlled open enrollment school. We do have, as you know, in review, there is a recension of a current policy related to school choice, and then new policies related to school choice for full-time employees, school choice for resident and non-residents, and also controlled open enrollment. So there really are 4 ways that students can attend schools in Martin County. The policies that are up for the board's consideration at the next meeting, as well as being a student who lives in the home zone of that school. So just a little bit of information, as Dr. Malham used to always say, a bit of an eye chart for you. This is the projected enrollment for elementary schools for next year. So what we do is we basically roll up the 5th graders into the 6th grade, roll up 8th grade into 9th grade, roll out the graduates, and then duplicate the number of kindergarten to project what our numbers will look like for enrollment next year in our schools. We also have been through the choice, the specialty pathways options for parents now, and so we have students who have been accepted. Parents have clicked the button and enrolled their students in the new school for next year, so we have looked at that information. We have also looked at the number historically of students who have come back to us, for example, in high school from private charter and homeschool, and have projected numbers for you compared to capacity. In elementary, fish seats, what that really means is just the Department of Ed looks at what the intended use of each room in each school is designed for, whether it's for a gen ed classroom, whether it's a resource room, media center, that kind of thing, and they generate the number of students, the number of student stations, or the number of students who can attend that school without being overcrowded. That does not include portables. We know we've had a great push in our district to encourage our students to start early and stay with us in the Martin County School District. We know we're a great option, so when we bring them in pre-K, that has been a great investment for us. So we have, actually, you'll see for elementary, you'll see the fish seats and then fish minus pre-K, because when we have pre-K students, those are seats that were defined in fish that can't be filled by a K through 5 student, because we are filling those with the pre-K students. So just giving you a kind of a definition of what we're looking at there. And then the percent capacity and the percent capacity, the fish minus pre-K. We have 3 schools that are over the 75%, I'm sorry, 4 schools over the 75% capacity. Staff is recommending that 3 of them not be considered for controlled open enrollment, but that one, being Port Salerno Elementary, be able to continue as a controlled open enrollment school, because they do have additional seats or spaces or classrooms in the building that is affectionately known as the old Port Salerno Elementary, where there would be additional space for students. So that's why that one is not, even though it's over the percent capacity as identified by the board, that's the reason staff wouldn't be making that recommendation for you.
So Dr. Miller, has there, I'm just looking at Port Salerno in particular, has there been any consideration for moving the VPK students that are at the other building off campus to Port Salerno Elementary so that they?
From the old Salerno Schoolhouse?
Mm-hmm.
There hasn't been discussion to date, but that's something that staff can look at, and I look at my colleague, Mr. LaBarbera, for discussions around that. We could, if that's something that the board's interested, moving students over.
Because I know we had talked about doing that at Warfield too, as well, so that there is that continuity on the same campus. So just something, maybe a future discussion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So for elementary, that was the elementary information. And then for secondary schools, we have capacity available at every single one of our middle schools. You'll see, and I should have shaded it, colored it red, we're at 75% capacity for Anderson, but because it is a large campus and we have a lot of seats available, we would ask that that remain as controlled open enrollment, as well as all of the middle schools. And then high school, that's where we do tend to have our students really engage in our programming. We have students who get excited about our CTE programs. We have students who get excited about specialty pathways. We have lots of advanced programming, great opportunities for students in the high school. And so you can see that we do have quite a number of students. We are actually above capacity in many cases in our high schools. And then compared to the fish seats. We also know, for example, Martin County High School, we do have lots of portables, and I did mention that fish does not include the portables, so I'm not real concerned about running out of space in particular at Martin County, but would ask that they just be considered among a choice program, not specifically the controlled open enrollment. And then this, as you've seen in the past, these are actually numbers like individual students. What we'll be moving toward in the future is more of an FTE look. So for example, especially in high school and elementary, it's typically one student is in kindergarten. They're there all day, all year. So one student is generally the same as one FTE in elementary. Middle school, very similar, with a few students who might leave for some reason and might not be there for the full day and earning a full FTE, but it's close. High school's a completely different story because lots of options for kids. We have students who graduate early. We have students who take on different programs, and so we may not be earning full FTE on all of our students. So what we're going to do in the future, when you see these presentations, for example, at the county meeting, the joint meeting with the county and the village and the city and all of those groups, we would be sharing not just enrollment numbers, but we would be looking at the FTE, because I think there's a little bit of, when you see the enrollment numbers and wow, we're over capacity, it looks like you have so many students, when we do have a lot of students, we just don't have them staying all day and earning full FTE, and that's really, as you know, as the board, where we are capturing the funding. So we want to make sure that we're able to provide the opportunity for all students who want to attend our great Martin County schools to be able to do so through these options. So our goal really is to fill seats in all cases to fish capacity, and in some cases even we are able to exceed that based on FTE, not necessarily on the unique numbers of students. So one of the ways to ensure, because I mentioned there are 4 ways to really attend a school, we have to have a seat available if you move in within the home zone of that school. We also need to make sure that our employees, our full-time employees, if they want their child to attend a school, that we have a seat available for them. So we would like to set aside at the controlled open enrollment schools maybe 2 to 3% of students, of seats that would be available kind of for those purposes. So we would have controlled open enrollment to be able to fill all the available seats, except for setting aside, whatever the board would choose, 2 to 3% of seats that would be held back, so to speak, for those students who would be moving in, those students who might be transferring, or those who might be the child of an employee. So and then, if you don't mind scrolling, Lana, I appreciate that. This is just to show you what you already know, and Mr. Morrison's been sharing with us for quite a while, is that we're not just in a state of stagnant enrollment, we're actually at declining FTE. So while we might have some years more individual students than we had prior, we don't have more FTE. So that's a distinction that you'll be hearing more often, and something that we're really moving away from individual counting individual students to really looking at the way the FTE looks.
So Dr. Miller, do you have those, what is the projected FTE as opposed to the projected actual number of children or kids?
So if you like the idea that that's being shared, what I would do is work with finance and with Mr. Morrison to really look at a percentage. It's varied in the past years, somewhere around 93, 94% of. So if we had 1,000, if we had 100 students, typically the FTE generated on those students would be 93 to 94. So we would be looking at a percentage for full-time FTE. Okay. Yes. Right. So if that's agreeable, we would look at something like that for future reporting. And then just to share what we typically share this time of year, you all know there are lots of neighborhoods and lots of things happening in Martin County. We are just not seeing new students materialize from those new neighborhoods. We do have several that we are tracking. We have several that we have conversations with the county and the city about, and we're just not seeing increased enrollment or increased FTE being generated. And in fact, the projection is to continue without those increased numbers of students for the near future. They are expected not to generate large numbers of students for the next couple of years. And so in summary, our recommendation would be that for controlled open enrollment, we would be looking at 9 elementary schools, with the exception of Bessie Creek, Jensen Beach Elementary, and Warfield. They would remain as a choice school, as all of them would be. Middle school would all be controlled open enrollment, and then high schools being at greater capacity at this point, they would still be available for choice. Thoughts, questions, comments from board members?
Sure, I have a couple. So using the 93%, when I take the high schools, for example, Jensen Beach High School, using 93%, if you have 1739 as enrollment, 93% of that is 1617, which changes your capacity number compared to your fish seat to 104%. And your percentages then become 104, 91, and 93, which is still well over the 75%. using that same calculation, if I do the 5562 as your enrollment number, correct? And then I compute 93%, so I figure what my 7% extra is to figure out what my full-time enrollment is. I'm coming up with 5162, so I'm figuring that that's about 400. So is that what, I guess, is that what it looks like in high school, in FTE? I guess that would be a Mr. Morrison question.
Or is that what you're targeting to?
No, I think-
Is that what you're saying?
think
to target
that's-
to accept into the programs?
No, I'm just saying that, no, just as far as computing FTE against enrollment.
Oh, okay.
So if I know I have enrollment in high schools of 5562, that's 5,562 beating hearts. But if I use 93%, it means that I lose 400 of that number in order to get to my FTE number. So I'm guessing, is it about 400?
So, Carter Morrison, Assistant Superintendent for Finance. You're spot on, Mrs. Roberts. The preliminary FTE that has not been certified by the state yet, as we're still waiting on the third calc for high school, is the FTE is 5128.03.
Okay.
By your math, taking the 5562 and applying the percentage, you would come down to 5172.66. So comparing that to the preliminary October, we would be off by about 44.63 FTE, so that's close.
Okay. And then, so I just want to understand, make sure I understand how this process works then. So when you're saying that we have controlled open enrollment, for example, at Anderson Middle School, and Anderson Middle School has a fish capacity of 1201, what you're saying is that if you hold back 2% of those seats and push 24 seats to choice, to the choice policy that's resident, non-resident, which the new policy looks very similar to the controlled open enrollment, that the numbers that get reported quarterly to the state as far as vacancies, the numbers that run through the process using the controlled open enrollment piece that's designated by the state, by saying, yes, we're opening controlled open enrollment at Anderson Middle School to 98% of fish capacity. Means that I have set aside 24 seats that I can use on the other policy. It also gives me the flexibility then to move beyond those 24 seats and to exceed the fish capacity because I'm doing it with a different process. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. So you're looking at 2 to 3% for each of the controlled open enrollment pieces, right?
If that's agreeable.
I think that's fine. I don't know how the rest of you feel about it, but.
Okay, so you would see this back at the regular board meeting this month for board action. And then we would begin notifying families. And really for families, we handle all of these intricacies that we just talked about. Families just need to know that we are open for choice and parents have options, students have options here in the school district, and we believe, your best option.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Kathy, Dr. Parandozzi, and Dr. Muto, and Ms. Cantina Harris for Code of Conduct.
Good evening. Superintendent Main, Board Chair Pritchett, Vice Chair Powers, our board members, our school district community, and our Martin County community. This evening, the Student Services Office, under the leadership of Dr. Estevez, brings to you the Code of Student Conduct. Tonight, we're going to go through our introductions and timeline. You will see that this evening. I'm Dr. Kathy Parandozzi, the Director of Student Services. My staff is a little sick, but they hung in there tonight to be with you. So we have Dr. Muto, our coordinator, and Ms. Harris, our manager of mental health and threat assessment. We're going to go through the timeline. How did we get here? And this timeline, we're going to go through this a little quickly for you. We know you had a heavy evening. But through this timeline, we started this process with the code of conduct, which may be or seem a little early for you all. We started in September asking you for your representatives, and we put that together, set out the schedule for the entire school year or this school year, planning for the 25-26. We set up our meetings, set up the guidelines. We set 4 meetings for our focus group. We noticed them, set everything out. We had such a dynamic focus group that we only needed 3 meetings. They took care of every task, looked at everything, and you'll hear about that in just 3 meetings. So you'll see that we didn't need the last meetings, which was fabulous. The next phase, of course, is all the board processes. We are here tonight for the workshop, hopefully getting to the next board meeting for an actual approval. And then the last or next steps are everything we have to do to prepare to roll that out. And that is the translation piece of this. I kept saying transcription. These guys got me. The translation piece, updating all of our schools' handbooks. And then it's the training part, the training of our administrators, and the first day of rolling that out for the first day according to policy and aligning that, because policy does require that we do so in that first day. We had the recommendation or the suggestion that we identify and acknowledge and recognize the actual members of this focus group, because they truly did such a fabulous job, not only in the work, but their recommendations. And you'll see the recommendations towards the end, something that we put out to you last year called the chart of changes, and the minimal charts, the changes on that chart. But we wanted to address each one of them. This is the student list. I want you to know that we had several students, and it was a couple from each of our high schools, and these folks ended up showing up for each of the meetings, staying throughout. They had a voice, and they had a voice in each one of the focus group projects, and they participated fully. What a dynamic group of students. We have some awesome children. Staff members, teachers, assistant principals, a principal. And I will have you know that these folks, along with our community partners from all over, everyone has a full-time job, right? Our parents, our partners, our police, our deputies, everyone has a full-time job. And they not only did those full-time jobs, including our students, it's a full-time job, right? But then they spent evening time with us, and they all fully participated. So I wanted to thank them publicly as well for the time that they gave us, and they were fully committed. Thanking our school board attorney, he comes and he presents at the beginning and he shares the Sunshine Law with everyone. And so we do want to thank him for his expertise in sharing that with us as well. I'm going to quickly go through this process. This is a process because when we started this focus group and getting through this, we really want them to understand the purpose. Why are they here? It is not just to voice these concerns or any kind of complaints. That's not what this is about. What this is about is really, why are you here? And we want you to actually have the understanding of what the Student Code of Conduct is, and that it matters, your voice matters, and what you do and what you have to say really matters. So we give them the purpose, we identify why the people matter, and the process itself. We go all the way back to, and I usually always start with the federal, the state, and our local mandates. We explained that most in this Code of Student Conduct has to do around policy, but the part that matters for them and the focus group is that they will cover all the infractions in each of our levels and the corrective action. We worked on the 4 C's, so we had the 3 P's, now we have the 4 C's. And so when we talked about the 4 C's in each of their activities as they rotated each meeting, it was about they had the opportunity to obtain clarity, talk about what the board commitment would be in their recommendations, any contributions they would like to make for us, and then continued concerns. What would be their continued concerns that they would like this board to hear? And what did they want us to bring back? So one of the situations, as we went through that, I just would like you to know at the end, they did all of that in their work in each activity. And then at the end, a full group session came together. Every concern that they had, we put up. And then they voted on consensus. What were the items they wanted to bring back to the board? And on that chart of changes, there are just a few, and those were the items that they felt the strongest about, talked through, provided clarity, and those are the items that were brought through for change. So we also had a recommendation, and I wanted you to take a look, and it was a look back. So the board last code of conduct had 4 initiatives, and it was the ABCV: attendance, bullying, cell phones, and what is referred to as vaping, but our data collection is tobacco and THC. So you're going to see a little bit of that. It's not a heavy detailed of that data piece because it was kind of a late request that we put those in, but I did want to just put up some data, do a quick revision, a look back at that data, and then kind of see, is it something that, are these initiatives that we want to continue? So for us in the school system, we always want to, of course, and we always will, as it's an early warning indicator, look at attendance. That's something we're never going to let go. But as for the rest of them, is it something we always want to emphasize along the way? And is it an initiative that the board would like to continue to speak to and address? So as we look at attendance, the attendance comparisons, if you want to look at that graph, quarter 1 and quarter 2 are the comparisons that we have, and those comparisons for quarter 1 and quarter 2 were both a slight increase in attendance from 90.5% to 91.3% from last year to this year. And then it was a very small increase in quarter 2, 89.3 to 89.9. And that's your attendance. On bullying, the way bullying is coded, there was an increase in bullying being reported. Now, I want you to take a look at that and just kind of think as a correlation. We emphasized, we educated, there was an awareness campaign among administrators, among students at schools. This initiative brought awareness to all schools and to all students about bullying. So there's a possibility that, yes, it did increase, and everybody says, well, wait a minute, what's happening? But that awareness may have come to students reporting, right? So you have bystanders now who may no longer be a bystander, but may report that bullying, feel comfortable in the reporting process of bullying. So sure, we might have had a little bit of an increase. That's not a bad thing, that's a good thing. The other, and we want to let you know that the Student Services Office, this team put together a committee so that we can look at the processes and procedures of bullying and the bullying investigation. And they have already met once, and they're revising that plan and aligning that plan so that the investigation bullying is better aligned for both schools and for the process to see that we can improve that process along the way. So we're already taking some action there. Thank you. Cell phones, cell phone data, we don't have comparison data because it is not recorded in the same manner. To no one's surprise, I do believe, you can see that the cell phone data was higher as far as infractions at the secondary level than it would have been in high school. Than it would be at elementary. So we know that our high school students have a greater infraction. But here's what I'd like to say to everybody. I'm just going to read just a couple of schools to give you examples. I'm not going to read the actual school, but I will read for you just a couple of numbers so you could see this downward trend. So from August through December, I'm going to read a high school first. 218 the first month, down to 127, 84 the next month, 71 to 43 ending in December. They got the hint, right? I'm going to give you a middle school. A middle school went from 25, 34, 32, right? Fluctuating, 28 down to 11. Another high school, 199, 150, 108, 87 to 69. So the pattern continued with middle school and high school each month. Right? Higher numbers in the beginning and going down. So it looks like the continuation, if we remain consistent, we will see a difference in that pattern. So the last chart that you will see is regarding data. And it's funny because Pal, who works with some of our kids that work on the tobacco and the vaping, they have an intervention and they work with us on that. All of a sudden, they came up to us one day and they were like, wait a minute. We're not getting referrals for a lot of kids. And we were like, no, you're not, because we're not getting a lot at the middle school level. And so you will see the reduction in both tobacco and THC this year. So the comparisons are pretty good. The numbers vary. There's a little more at the high school this year at 22 and middle school with 9. So it has been reduced. Last year, the comparisons, middle school had 15 and it's being reduced to 9. So, you know, the numbers are not astronomical, but everything is going in a better direction. So we're pleased with the numbers, but sure, I think we, you know, are going to continue working on all those initiatives. I don't think we should ever really stop educating children. Like, I don't think we should ever stop on that campaign. So we would like to do that and continue with the numbers. So thank you for the recommendation of taking a look back. And our last slide for you all in the presentation and regarding the Student Code of Conduct really is the time now for you to give us any feedback on the new document, on any of the changes that were made, any questions you may have, and noting, of course, that the new document has a new aesthetic, has a reduced number, and it is there for you or for us now. We are ready for your comments.
I'm just curious, why is this page marked for the dress code and highlighted? Was that one special?
Well, no, what was posted initially, and the reason, yes, it is special. No, it was posted initially, and then the dress code in the previous, you know, dress code is a hot topic, right? It always is. And all policies have been moved and linked in the back. That happened last year. But with dress code being a continuous hot topic and hot item, especially for most schools, we just really wanted to put the dress code infraction and that piece of the policy which spells it out. We just went ahead and included it back right there in as a quick reference. So that was added since it was posted. So therefore, it was tagged since it was just an updated since it was posted, to draw attention to that for you. Absolutely. Thank you for that.
Dr. Moriarty?
Yeah, was there any discussion at all about the dangers of energy drinks? In one of our local charter schools outlawed energy drinks today, and I was just wondering if there was any discussion about the dangers that could have for children especially, and any possible outlaw of that. Was that at all discussed?
No, there was not. I mean, it might be something that we can bring forward, discuss with maybe food services and see if there's anything that has come down from that avenue, but there was not in the code of conduct.
Okay, because our food services does not sell any of those type energy drinks, but oftentimes they'll bring them from home and not really aware of the consequences. And if you just do a quick Google search, there are disastrous consequences for children. So, you know, this could be something for next year, obviously, but it's definitely something I'd like to see looked into is confiscation of these high sugar, high caffeine energy drinks among our student population.
Thank you.
So I would just ask Brian, do you know was it a certain age group or was it just across the board? I guess have them reach out to the school too to see why they did it, because it could be happening in our own schools. We don't even know it, or hasn't been risen to the surface, I guess. I don't drink energy drinks, so I don't know what they do.
Yeah, I don't either, but the American Academy of Pediatrics has advised against them for consumption in our children, especially under the age of 12. So they've started confiscating these things. So I think this is a serious issue. It affects attention, the amount of sleep, digestive issues. It's something I'd love to see this board look at. I don't know if a policy or if the code of conduct might be the proper avenue for this, but it's something that I'm very passionate about within the health of our children. So just want to make that recommendation.
So Health Services resides in the Student Services Office, so we'll take a look at that. We will work again with Food Services and take a look at in our department or in our district if we have anything with vending machines, that kind of thing. So we'll take a well-rounded look and a collaborative effort with all of our systems.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure, I had a couple things. Since dress code is a hot topic and it appears on page 12, maybe on your table of contents, between section 2 and section 3, you can have an indent, put dress code, and put the page number, just to kind of
Sure.
make it easier to see.
Thank you.
The second comment I have is on pages 19 and pages 22. So I'll go to page 19 first, almost to the bottom, like the 7th line up.
Okay.
You have assessor incidents, which is saying assessor codes and definitions.
Right.
I don't know whether maybe it would be appropriate there to say that the 3-letter code is the assessor code that is used to do reporting to the state, but somehow or other reference that the assessor incidents get reported to the state under those codes.
Okay.
And
Clarify that.
That would be both on page 19 and on page 22. 22 just has assessor incidents with a colon. But I think you can lose the star in front of it and say assessor incidents and do the FLDOE, assessor codes and definitions, but put some language in there that says that that's the 3-digit code, that,
That
that's
is
how we
reported
report
to
it
the
to the
state.
state.
Absolutely.
So that people will know that under the level 3 and under the level 4 infractions, if you see that code, that's the one that we're reporting.
Thank you.
Other than that, thank you. It looks very good.
Terrific.
I just had one question.
Yes.
Can you go back to the slide that shows the attendance graph?
Absolutely.
I think this looks amazing. Thank you.
There we go. Yeah, somebody else.
Come on.
I always have to turn it off and turn it back on.
Well, I can look at this. Yeah. I'm curious why quarter 2 is so much lower than quarter 1. Is that a pattern that is prevalent in schools, that quarter 1 has better attendance than quarter 2?
I have not looked at our county over the years. We just did the last 2 years. We can take a look back and see if there's a pattern or a trend. We do have both 2 holidays, Thanksgiving and the Christmas holidays during that time, right, November, December. If we did not have the full week off, sometimes families choose to take it off, sometimes there's a lot of travel, so depending on that, during those times, depending if the quarter ran over, we can only guess.
Okay.
I'd have to take a look. Sometimes folks take other holidays off during that time.
Yeah, I didn't think of that, but it looked a little bit kind of jarring to me,
It does, depending if there's, Jewish holidays during that time.
Right.
There's a lot of things that go on during just that period of time, so folks take off quite a few days. But I would just have to look at over a 5-year span to see if there was any sort of pattern or trend.
Yeah, because if there was, maybe there's something we could do to lift it up a bit.
Right.
Thank you.
A 3 to 5 year span of data would only give me those trends.
Yep. Thank you so much. Anybody else? This is terrific. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your input.
Okay, moving right along. Open to the board. Anyone?
I had a couple things.
I have a couple things.
Go ahead.
Okie dokie. Go ahead, Dr. Moriarty.
Yeah, during public comment, it was mentioned about the people were concerned about raids in our schools. I don't see Ms. DeShazo here, but maybe the superintendent wanted to address that. I don't know if you want to do that now or.
I had asked him to do it at
Oh,
the end.
okay. Do you want to do that at the end, Mr. Superintendent? Okay. That was one. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up was apparently there is a cell phone tower being built in front of Palm City Elementary. And there's some growing concern in my district about that and the children there. I reached out to the county commission and Commissioner Campy, and he shared with me that basically something like that is done by the state, and there's no public hearing, and there's really not a whole lot they could do. But after doing some digging, where that cell phone tower is being built is on basically someone's property, and that person has most likely made some kind of a deal with the cell phone carrier who's putting that there. So I would encourage people, it seemed like on this social media post they were saying to reach out to the county. Doesn't sound like the county can help them, but maybe reach out to the landowner who's leasing that land to a cell phone company if they don't really want a cell phone tower right in front of Palm City Elementary. If they're concerned with the health ramifications, that might be a better route to go. That's all I've got.
Roberts?
Sure. I was also going to mention the Palm City Elementary cell phone tower and perhaps ask if we could get Tyson Waters to look into that and give us something, because he's normally the attorney we use to do that type of thing. And I'll wait to hear what you have for the ICE enforcement, because I do think that if there are any protocols, if our staff is being trained, obviously that would be, in some respects, some of that would be a public record. And rather than have people have to do a public record request, it might be better to just go ahead and do some posting so that people know what it is. Thank you.
I wanted to wish all of our counselors happy National Counselors Week. Thank you for all you do. And Superintendent shared with me today that he was out giving some awards out, so I'd like to hear about that as well. And that's it.
Good. Thank you for the opportunity, Madam Chair. So we'll start with the awards because that's fun. The HR department invited me on a prize patrol today as they honor monthly employees that are employees of the month throughout the district. We had the opportunity to go to Food and Nutrition, honor one of our own safety and security personnel, Mr. John at the front desk. We also had an opportunity to go to Anderson Middle School for a teacher, as well as Jensen Beach High School. And I think there was one other employee, but the HR team took care of that individual because he's traveling between schools. But this is something that we are doing through the HR department as a retention piece. They're doing an incredible job. Katrina and Marley have headed that up, and it's fun. So next time we go, we will put out an email. This was my first time going, and invite anybody who would like to join the prize patrol, because it's an honor to see those staff members light up. They're totally surprised. They get a balloon, they get a cupcake, they get, today they actually got a $25 gift card to Collab Kitchen. Next month, I'm being told it's a dinner cruise type package. The staff has gone out to local businesses and are getting donations from local businesses to give to those staff members. So it's been a lot of fun. They spin the wheel and then they're nominated by their peers. So it's going really well. And so I appreciate the HR department and that initiative. And from there, we'll move on to ICE. So to answer your question, Ms. Roberts and also Dr. Moriarty, we do have policies and procedures and a protocol that we will follow, and we'd be more than happy to share that, but we aren't doing anything different for ICE or Homeland Security that we would do different from a DCF person showing up on a campus or an outside agency that shows credentials that would like access to interview a student. There typically is a warrant or a subpoena or a court order that is required to access student records. If we have not had any raids, and I use that term because I think the public believes that we will have our law enforcement officials barging into schools with guns drawn in their ICE uniforms or Homeland Security uniforms, and that is not the partnerships that we have with our local law enforcement agencies, to include our local ICE division and Homeland Security division. Our Martin County Sheriff's Office, in conjunction with our Chief Safety and Security Officer, Mr. Frangella, is working in tight coordination. If we are notified that there is a student that needs to be spoken to, or if we have a high school student that is being charged with a federal crime, then we will they will be made way on campus. I have met with all of our staff to make sure that we are doing this in a dignified manner, in a safe manner, that we are not going to allow law enforcement to barge into a classroom, but they will be given a location in the front office, a private location like we do with any outside agency, for one of our staff members, a guidance counselor, a school psychologist, a social worker, or a school administrator, or in some cases, the preferred school resource officer that has relationship with these students, to go to the classroom and have the student brought down to the front office and placed in a private, secure location. We have always been very cautious about throwing students in handcuffs and placing them in the back of a police car publicly and in front of students. Yes, there are times where there is a fight that occurs on campus, or there's an emergency that occurs on campus, which results in law enforcement having to secure the situation. That happens in front of students and staff. But when it's done in a controlled environment, in a controlled way, we always have placed the safety of the student first and the dignity of the student. But we will cooperate with authorities. We will cooperate fully with law enforcement and federal agencies that require our assistance. But it will be done in a true partnership fashion and in a controlled type of way.
Okay. Adjourned. Next. Do we want to take a break before we go, or you want to just keep rolling? Okay. We have another meeting. Okay. Can I have approval of the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Dr. Moriarty and Ms. Powers, second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. First review of school board policy, 3.01, 511303, school choice for residents and non-residents.
Move approval of item 3.01.
Second.
Ms. Powers, motion. Ms. Russell, second. All those in,
Can I have a comment about it first, please?
For discussion, yeah?
Thank you. I had 3 things that I think need to be corrected on the policy. On page 3 of 5, I talked to the superintendent and I talked to Lana about these today. The first one is halfway down the page where the paragraph starts with approved applicants will be notified in writing and shall have 10 school days to enroll at their chosen school. If the last day for enrollment falls on a day that the school office is not open for business, the deadline shall be extended to the next day that the school office is open for business. I believe that should be changed to work days, meaning work days of the Martin County School District, and the second sentence could be struck. So we would be changing the word school to work and striking that second sentence, doing that same action on the top of page 5, where it starts with after an applicant is notified in writing, the applicant shall have 10, and then instead of saying school days, it would say work days. Also, after that paragraph on page 5, where you have the struck sentence of if the last day of enrollment falls on a day that the school office is not open for business, the deadline shall be extended. After that one, I think a new paragraph needs to be inserted that says late filed applications for high school will be processed on June 1st for the first semester and on November 15th for the second semester. So keep in mind that what happens in this policy is that if you apply during the month of March, that's considered the normal application period. If you apply after March 31st, you're now processed as a late application. When you're processed as a late application in elementary and middle school, it isn't as important. You can process somebody halfway through a semester without it being a big deal because they just moved from one school to another. But in high school, because you're getting credits based on a semester, that 10-day window piece creates an issue that if a seat shows up and somebody is offered a seat on, say, October 1st, and they now have 10 days to accept that seat, then that has them accepting a seat the middle of October, but now they're put in a position where in the middle of October, if their schedules don't line up, so imagine if you're going from Martin County High School to South Fork High School, and that's what you're trying to move from, but at Martin County, you were taking culinary in the first semester, which isn't offered at South Fork High School, but now you've got 10 days to decide if you're going to move. You now move in November, but there is no credit to make up. So by doing this, this makes it so that the applications are being processed. By making it November 15th, it gives the 10 working days, which gets us kind of through Thanksgiving. Anybody who doesn't pick it up and take their seat then, they can give the seat to somebody else, and it gives them another 15 days to pick up that seat, and then puts them in line to start the second semester. Same thing for the June 1st deadline. So that means that if you didn't apply by March 31st, you would have April and May that you could still be submitting an application, getting a number, being processed, put in a bin, put in one of the phases. On June 1st, you would have the first 10 days, and then if you didn't accept it, that seat would be offered to somebody else, and they would also get 10 days to do it. So that's my thought process, to add that there.
So I would just ask if that's been an issue that we need to address. Is it, and those dates work for, that's a recommendation from staff? Perfect. I move approval with the changes. Oh, well, I already made the motion, but I amend my motion to accept the changes that Ms. Roberts mentioned, if the seconder agrees.
Ms. Powers, motion, Ms. Russell, second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Done. You want to do open to the board again?
Public comment.
Open to the board. I know.
Public comment.
Well, there's nobody here. Did I